What would happen when someone from our world was suddenly reborn into the world of My Hero Academia with a gacha system that rewards him with abilities, techniques, and skills from Jujutsu Kaisen, grand epic fights and crazy shenanigans as he goes through the story to cause chaos and change the world to his liking? Hello everyone, Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in MHA with Jujutsu Gacha System. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
What is reincarnation? From what I understood, reincarnation is the religious or philosophical belief that the soul or spirit, after biological death, begins a new life in a new body that may be human or animal. Now, then, what is transmigration? Transmigration, also known as rebirth, is the idea that a living being's non-physical essence starts a new life in a different body after death. Some would say these two concepts are the exact same or similar enough that they might as well have the same word to describe them. Others would argue that these two concepts are completely different and come with their own distinct differences. What is my opinion on the matter? One may ask. It's simple. Who cares? Su-chan. You can't say that. That's a bad word. Meh. I looked away from the young, pale blue-haired little girl and popped another grape into my mouth. I ignored her annoyed pout and looked up at the annoying blue sky as I continued eating my snack. Sighing in defeat, my fellow orphan retook her seat next to me on one of the small pastel-colored chairs and grabbed her half-eaten cookie. Want a grape? Really? Yeah. Here. Haze Keiko's vibrant yellow eyes glowed with happiness as she accepted my offer. She didn't wait to devour the sweet and crunchy pieces of fruit as she chewed on the fruit with a large smile. Thank you, Su-chan. Yeah. You're welcome. Now then, where was I? Ah, yes. I was talking about reincarnation and/or transmigration. It's definitely not something a 5-year-old child like myself would normally think about or deliberate during their recess break. However, the topic was very relevant to my current situation. I was a person who was seemingly reborn with all their past memories into a new world. It was a crazy and almost unbelievable fact the moment I realized the truth after I realized I was once again a baby being held in my mother's arms. I had tried to brush this off as a dream, but the dream had seemingly never ended. Seeing that this was now my reality, I had to take the reality of my situation seriously and move on. Ah. Su-chan. Kei-chan. Let's go play hero. I looked over at another fellow orphan as he came to a stop in front of both Keiko and me with an excited smile. The boy had dark orange hair and orange-colored eyes. However, the color of his hair and eyes was quickly forgotten when the young boy's body resembled an anthropomorphic red-scaled walking lizard. This fact would normally cause everyone in the area to panic and run in fear or confusion. At least, it would have in my past life. Okay. Keiko nodded and jumped off her chair. Let's go, Su-chan. I'll pass, I said and waved them away. You two go ahead. Keiko looked dissatisfied with my answer, but the walking lizard, Tsuchida Hideo, nodded and grabbed her wrist. He began to pull the surprised Keiko off towards the center of the orphanage's open courtyard, where several other children were grouped up together. Off to the sides were a few of the orphanage caretakers watching the gathered kids with amused smiles as they continued their daily chores or duties. Oh, I want to be All Might. No. You were All Might yesterday. It's my turn. No way. See, I have yellow hair like All Might, so I should be All Might. No fair. No fair. I sighed as the group of kids began to argue about who would be Japan's #1 hero in today's session of their made-up game, Heroes and Villains. Yes, you heard me right. All Might. The plus ultra guy that can punch a hole through the atmosphere and change the weather. A fictional character from one of my world's hit anime manga series, My Hero Academia, was now, in fact, a real person in this world. This means that alongside him, every other character from that series was now a living, tangible person alongside the very world the author of the series created. At least if everything I've seen on television was to be believed, this meant I was now in a world where around 80% of the population had some sort of power or quirk that could determine the course of your life. Why couldn't I have just vanished into the nothingness of the universe? Instead, I'm now stuck in this train wreck of a world. I released a long sigh and leaned my head back onto my chair. I guess it's not so bad. I could have popped up an Attack on Titan or Berserk. But still, the thought of being in a world where 80% of the population has a quirk is daunting. It's not the world I was used to, and it's a lot to take in. I closed my eyes and popped another grape in my mouth. I leaned back and relaxed under the sun's warm rays of light. In my previous life, I had greatly enjoyed the series for what it was. But as the story progressed and began to near its inevitable end, the writing and character direction completely lost me. I had dropped MHA after Class 1A used the power of friendship to bring back the series protagonist, Bakugakov, Midoriya Izuku, back from his short stint as a vigilante. This meant I had a pretty good understanding of the future and people in this world. Well, that is if everything happens like it did in canon. If not, then I got nothing, and I'd continue with my plan of getting the heck out of Japan as soon as I possibly could. I had no interest in sticking around for the fall of Japan society when shit hit the fan after all. But even with my knowledge, I have to be careful. I can't predict every twist and turn, and I don't want to get caught up in something I can't handle. Some would say, why don't you use your knowledge of the plot to help you? Wouldn't you have an incredible advantage you could leverage to propel you to the top? Normally, they would have a point. My future knowledge made me incredibly powerful. I could turn the tides of either side easily if I wished or use my knowledge to place myself at the top of the hero world. Unfortunately, there was a caveat. I was 5, almost 6, years old, and I had not awakened a damn quirk due to an extra joint in my toe. I was quirkless and had no real potential in this world society. Normally, in cases like mine where an individual gets placed into a fictional world, it's usually due to a being of higher power or a god wanting to mess with me for some sick amusement. Usually, at least in the stories I've read or seen where this was the case, the person who was reborn would have received an OP ability or a cheat to help them progress in this world. I, however, didn't get jack shit and was born as a normal person. Trust me, I tested it. I had tried lifting objects much heavier than myself to discover if I had superhuman strength. Nothing. I had tried running faster than speed of sound, Sonic. Also nothing. I had tried expelling beams of power out of my eyes, hands, and feet. Surprise. Even more. Nothing. The only thing that differentiated this body from my past one was my ability to learn stuff. I guess you could call me smart, but in a world where might makes right, that shit didn't matter. To make matters worse, my parents from this life had died due to a massive fight that nearly leveled an entire city block into a flaming parking lot. Remember that clip Sad Sack Deku loved to watch when he was but a wee lad? The one where All Might pulled out several people from a flaming wasteland with a smile? That's the one. My parents had died due to one of our apartment walls crashing down and crushing them alive. I had watched them be crushed before my very eyes as a small 3-year-old. Completely helpless and weak to do anything as their pain screams filled my ears as the stone column slowly crushed them to death. Okay. Stop that. Stop it. I closed my eyes and grasped the sides of my face tightly as my stomach felt like it was about to launch all my grapes back out. It didn't matter that I was a person reborn into a fictional world. Seeing that was seriously messed up, and the nightmares from that day still haunted me every now and then. I had to be some sort of psychopath if what I saw didn't affect me at all. I didn't even like thinking about it. Moving on, then. I released my face and frowned as I watched the kids running around as they chased one another. Their game of heroes and villains resembled something more like tag but with teams. I joined in from time to time so I didn't give off the impression that I wasn't a normal kid to the adults. It was a pretty simple game, but it was a nice distraction from the monotony of being a child with little freedom. As the kids ran around, I looked around the orphanage with uninterested eyes. The orphanage was a large, old building with a worn but welcoming appearance. The exterior was painted in a soft, pastel color, giving it a sense of warmth and comfort. As one entered the building, you were greeted by a spacious and bright common area where children's laughter echoed off the walls. Colorful drawings and artwork adorned the walls, adding a touch of cheerfulness to the surroundings. Around the open courtyard, small, pastel-colored chairs and tables were scattered around the area, creating a cozy and inviting atmosphere for us children. The caretakers moved about with gentle smiles, tending to the needs of the children and ensuring that we felt safe and loved, at least to a point. This orphanage was primarily used to house all the children and young adults who lost their parents or guardians during that tragic night. Some of the children sported burn scars and different healed injuries on their bodies as they ran around with reckless abandon while they laughed. Despite how it seems, I knew a lot of my fellow orphans were deeply affected by losing their parents and/or siblings from the destruction. Looking down at my scarred hands, I grimaced at the memory of my pitiful attempts at removing the flaming debris that separated me from my parents. Okay, kids. I looked up to see one of our caretakers, a woman with kind features and brown hair, call out to us with a small smile. It's time to head back inside. A collective wave of disappointed groans and moans sounded out from the children as they all slowly marched into the main building. I hopped to my feet and joined the orderly line of children as we walked inside towards our rooms to clean up for supper. Shimizu Sauta. That was the name I was given this time around. It was also the name that sat next to 3 others on the door that led to my shared room. I walked up to my bed and threw my body on its soft surface with a grunt. Tilting my head, I looked over to my nightstand and reached over to open the top drawer. Reaching in, I pulled out a small notebook and flipped through the several pages of writing I did. As with everything in life, given enough time, I was sure I would forget several key points of the MHA plot. So, to avoid that, I had written everything down in this notebook so I wouldn't forget. This normally would have been risky. What if the notebook fell into the wrong hands? If that were to happen, I would be in serious trouble. So, to avoid that, I wrote everything as if I were writing a fictional fantasy story and switched up key names with placeholders. One example would be that Midoriya Izuku's name was changed to Sheep Boy, while Bakugo Katsuki is now Spiky Pompom. Great names, I know. Anyways, I had tried to figure out where I was in the timeline by looking through the news and any information UA released about its students. I also watched the yearly UA sports festivals to see if any of the big 3 showed up to give me a better idea as well. From what I knew, Mirio, Nejaya, and Tamaki, UA's big 3, were 3rd years in the original canon, so that would clue me in on when things would start with Midoriya. Unfortunately, those 3 haven't shown up yet. Meaning they were probably still kids and I had to wait a couple more years until things popped off. Once I finally see them at the sports festival, I will finally get my indication of when to start getting my shit together to leave the country. No way in hell would I be here when All for One started wrecking everything. Despite my plan of getting the hell out of Dodge, I still wrote down everything I could remember from the original story. This starts when Midoriya first meets All Might during the Sludge Villain incident, and it goes up to the point where Shigaraki skewers Bakugo and nearly kills Gran Torino. The last thing I remember reading was Midoriya going through his lone wolf arc until his goody two-shoes classmates bring him back to school with the power of friendship. After that, I don't have a clue what happens, so whenever things get to that point, I'll be left completely blind to whatever awaits the world. Damn it. Why didn't I stick with the series until it ended? Assuming the series did have an ending and that it didn't continue going for several more years until Midoriya and his classmates graduated. Well, this is all on the assumption that my actions don't derail the main plot from its course. Such is the butterfly effect. Then again, I had no intention of getting involved in Horikoshi's mess. So I didn't really have to worry about the future. 98%. 100%. Loading complete. Congratulations. The Jujutsu Kaisen Gacha System is now fully installed. Say what? I sat up slowly and looked at the floating game-like screen with wide eyes. I looked around my shared room and found none of my roommates to see if this screen was real or if I was losing my marbles. The Jujutsu Kaisen Gacha System. The Jujutsu Kaisen Gacha System will allow you, the user, to use social points, SP, to pull random abilities, techniques, skills, items, and much more from a universe of Jujutsu Kaisen to empower you to greater heights. The way the user can earn SP is by interacting with this world's main players and by having either positive or negative social interactions. Each individual interaction will result in different amounts of points the user can spend to be able to pull for a chance to receive either copper, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, or diamond tier rewards. Oh, no. I don't like where this is going. 1500 SP will allow you to pull 2 times with a 35% chance to pull a diamond tier reward. 1000 SP will allow you to pull 4 times with a 50% chance to pull a gold tier reward. 700 SP will allow you to pull 6 times with a 45% chance to pull a silver tier reward. 500 SP will allow you to pull 8 times with a 75% chance to pull a bronze tier reward. 250 SP will allow you to pull 10 times with a 85% chance to pull a copper tier reward. We would like to thank the user for partaking in the Jujutsu Kaisen Gacha system, and we hope that it will help serve you in completing your goals. As a gift, you have been awarded 1500 SP. Now, wait a minute. I have way too many questions. I swiped at the floating screen as all the informational screens vanished, leaving behind a small floating gachapan machine in front of me. The machine looked exactly like any other gachapan machine that could be found in Japan. The prizes inside all contained different colored prize balls that glowed with a mysterious power. At the center was a large dial that one would use to pull a prize. This can't be real. I'm going nuts. I knew I should have gone to that therapist like that doctor said. Despite saying that, I eyed the lever with curious but suspicious eyes. Taking a deep breath, I reached over and turned the dial. I jumped back in surprise at the dial's surprisingly cool metallic texture. I took a few seconds to calm my beating heart and once again grabbed the lever. How much SP would you like to use? I see. So I have to tell the machine how many points I want to use. Let's see. I have enough points to do any of the 5 options. But doing the most expensive options will limit how many pulls I can do. I debated on what to do and brushed back my black hair with a groan. I can't believe I'm really entertaining this delusion. Still, if there's even a small chance that I'm not crazy and this thing is legit, then this could be my opportunity to rise to the top. Jujutsu Kaisen is another anime manga series from my original world. The series held a plethora of amazing and broken abilities from characters that could easily mollywop almost everything in MHA. If this gacha system could grant me abilities and techniques from that world, then nothing could stop me from achieving all of my ambitions. Gojo Satoru's Limitless and 6 Eyes, or even Ryaman Sukuna's Cleave Dismantle technique would make me invincible. If I could pull off either of those techniques, then the sky would be the limit. Use 1000 SP. I said and twisted the dial. The machine clanked and hummed as the bottom lid sprang open to reveal a glowing plastic ball. I tentatively grabbed the ball and snapped it open. You have pulled Nanami Kento's Cursed Energy Reserves. Rank: Silver. Wow. Instantly, I felt my body swell with a newfound source of power. I looked down at my scarred hands and clenched them into fists. Let's see. From what I remember, Cursed Energy, or Juyoku, is a power source that stems from negative emotions. Sorcerers and cursed spirits from JJK use Cursed Energy to fuel their jujitsu. Negative emotions are present in every human being to some extent. If this amount is higher than a certain degree, it grants the human the ability to see cursed spirits. Using that knowledge, I focused my negative emotions to bring out my Cursed Energy, or CE, to the surface. Slowly, black and blue waves of fire covered my hands. My mouth stretched widely at the sight of my new power, but it quickly vanished due to my brief distraction. Damn, having Nanami's reserves doesn't necessarily mean I have his control. I looked back up at the machine and saw the number 3 next to it. Right, I have 3 more pulls. Hopefully, I'll get something like Cursed Energy Mastery. The 6 Eyes would be great. Twisting the dial, I watched the prize balls dance within the machine. With a satisfying pop, the lid opened to reveal another prize ball. I grinned and snapped open the lid, only to frown at my prize. You have pulled Nobara Kujisaki's hammer. Rank: Bronze. What am I supposed to do with this? I lifted up the hammer and saw the small pink heart on its surface with a frown on my face. Unless I pull her technique, this is useless unless I decide to become a carpenter. I placed the hammer inside my nightstand and turned back to the gacha machine for another pull. You have pulled Yuji Itadori's hand-to-hand combat skills. Rank: Silver. Yes. I pumped my fist and felt a wave of knowledge surge into my brain. Jumping onto my feet, I tried to throw out the series of combos that reduced Mojito into a pathetic mess. But to my immense disappointment, my body failed to keep up with my mind. Meaning that my young, untrained body was incapable of performing a decent 1-2 punch. TCH. I guess this means I have to train my body to be able to keep up. Maybe I'll get lucky someday and get Toji's body. With one final pull left, I did a quick prayer to Akutami Gij and twisted the dial. Come on. Give me my gold tier reward. After another second of waiting, a glowing gold prize ball finally rolled out. Slowly, I reached out and grabbed the ball with a large smile on my face and snapped open the lid. You have pulled Todo Aoi's cursed technique, Boogie Woogie. Rank, Gold. Yes. I pumped my hands into the air in celebration, but suddenly paused. Hold on. Boogie Woogie switches the positions of the user and anything they desire that has above a certain amount of cursed energy. Meaning that if I want to switch with something, it needs to have cursed energy. Shit. I fell onto the floor and watched as the floating gachapon machine vanished, seemingly sensing I was done pulling for now. I remained where I lay until the sounds of rushing footsteps caused me to turn my head to see Keiko above me with a wide, excited smile. Su-chan. Su-chan. You'll never believe who's coming to visit us today. Keiko said as she danced around me. Pure happiness radiated off her, causing me to squint at her. Who the hell is coming here? It's Japan's #1 hero, All Might. My eyes grew wide as saucers at her answer, causing Keiko to chuckle at my expression as I quickly rose to my feet. Seriously. After drying my face with my blue towel, I looked up at the bathroom mirror. A small, youthful face stared back at me, barely containing the excitement within. My black eyes danced around as I intensely scrutinized my appearance. My straight but spiky black hair was combed back semi-neat, a stark departure from my usual wild and unkempt look. I was also wearing my nicest pair of clothes, black pants and a hoodie. I said nice, not fancy. Hurry up, loser. It's my turn. Yeah. I hopped down from the step stool I was standing on and opened the bathroom door to see a long line of children waiting to use the bathroom to take a shower, change, or freshen up. This was not a regular occurrence at the orphanage I stayed in, but due to our special guest tonight, everyone was in a rush to clean up and look presentable. All yours, my kind sir. I made an exaggerated motion towards the door, and an older boy with dark grey hair glared at me briefly before stepping inside the bathroom. TCH quirkless runt. The grey-haired jerk said before he closed the door. Make sure you clean your ass. I don't think the caretakers can keep buying you more underwear. I quickly pounded my fist on the bathroom door and decided to run off. The loud laughs of those still in line echoed behind me as an embarrassed but angry yell rumbled in the halls. That's not true. Gah. I'll get you, you quirkless little shit. +5 SP. +5 SP. +5 SP. +5 SP. I chuckled as I slowed to a walk with my hands in my pockets. I knew it was childish of me to pick on a child, but I didn't appreciate being bullied for something that was out of my control. It also didn't help that I did, in fact, receive social points with every interaction I had. It wasn't just limited to the main players, as the system said. Although the points I got from everyone else were minimal. Now then, back to the jerk. The way he treated me wasn't uncommon, as a few others at the orphanage called me names for my lack of quirk. I, of course, took it all like a champ and retaliated in my own subtle way. Said retaliation involved numerous pranks and framing them for minor transgressions to get the caretakers to punish them. I stopped walking and looked down at my hands with a frown. Looking down the hallway, I saw a boy sitting on a chair while reading an old manga. His hair was composed of several hundred green worms as they danced around on his head. Definitely one of the oddest quirks I've seen. Clap. The boy with worms for hair looked over in my direction but quickly shrugged. I sucked my teeth and ruffled my hair in frustration, ruining my once brushed hair. Just as I thought, I can't use Boogie Woogie on those without CE. I muttered and continued walking towards my destination, which was the cafeteria. Just my luck, one of the best cursed techniques, and I can't use it due to me being the only one with cursed energy in this world. I brought up my right hand and held my chin as I began to think of a way to properly utilize the technique with this world's limitations. What if I pumped someone with some of my CE to allow me to switch with them? just like how Todo infused his CE into a rock during his fight with the transfigured humans. I muttered and decided to head outside instead of to the cafeteria. But is that something I can do? What effect will CE have on the people of this world? HM. Opening the door, I looked around and saw no one else outside. I jogged over to the south side of the building, where no one usually hung around, to ensure I had some privacy. Scanning the ground, I found a well-sized rock in between a few blades of grass. Crouching down, I went ahead and grabbed the rock. With it in hand, I began to focus until waves of blue and black enveloped my hand. Slowly, I attempted to infuse my CE into the rock. After 5 minutes, I began to grow irritated at the rock and myself. No matter what I did, I couldn't get my CE to do what I wanted. TCH. This is hard. I just awakened this stupid gacha system and my CE. I shouldn't be surprised that I'm not an expert at this. Todo was a grade 1 sorcerer, after all. So, for him to be able to switch with a rock on the fly is easy. Currently, I'm no better than a Yuji at the start of the series. Just before I decided to give up, I decided to give it one more shot. Think of CE as electricity and cursed techniques as everyday appliances. Using electricity on its own is hard. But anyone can connect a vacuum cleaner to an outlet and power it on. Using that theory, all I have to do is think of this rock as a battery and pump my CE to charge it. I can't just try and force my CE into it and expect it to work. I closed my eyes and began to imagine the rock as a small battery. Carefully, I slowly pumped my CE into the rock. It took some time, but I eventually felt the transfer of energy go as I wanted. It was at that moment that I opened my eyes and saw the rock now covered in an aura of CE. Grinning at my achievement, I stopped pumping my CE into the rock and saw that it continued burning with my power. However, it gradually began to disappear without the continuous supply of CE from my body. I stood up and chucked the rock towards a far-off tree and clapped my hands. Before I knew it, I had suddenly swapped places with the rock. I looked back to where I once stood and saw the rock land on the grass, the embers of my CE now gone. A perfectly executed boogie-woogie swap. I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride and satisfaction at my successful use of the technique. I pumped my fist in the air and felt my understanding of CE improve. Raising my fist, I was able to quickly summon my CE around my arm and, in no time, infused it into the aforementioned limb. Walking over to the rock, I picked it up and held it in my hand. Grunting, I began to grip the rock in my grasp and eventually managed to crush it. With CE, I should be able to enhance my body to improve my strength, speed, durability, and stamina. With enough time and practice, I should be able to give most pro heroes a run for their money with pure CE alone. I said as the now shattered pieces of rock slid out of my hand and onto the ground. Looking at my hand, I saw that my experiment had its consequences. At the center of my palm was a deep gash from one of the pieces of rock cutting into my flesh. The gash was now bleeding, causing some blood to drip onto the blades of grass below. I winced in pain, but the smile on my face didn't disappear as I pulled out a handkerchief from my pocket to stop the bleeding. Maybe I could create my own cursed tool to swap with so I didn't have to keep infusing rocks with CE. With my experiment over with, I decided to head towards the cafeteria. As I walked, I wondered which option I should use my remaining 500 SP on. Reaching the cafeteria door, I heard several loud voices on the other side. But what stood out the most was the loud and booming voice that sounded bigger than life. That voice. I quickly opened the door and saw the symbol of peace himself dressed in his red, white, and blue hero costume at the center of the large cafeteria with several large bags filled with presents and gifts behind him. Standing all around the man were all the inhabitants of the orphanage. Each one of them was looking at All Might in awe and excitement. Off to the side, the adults and caretakers also looked like they were creaming their pants at the sight of the large man, but they held themselves back for the kids. Ha ha, I am here, with several presents for you all. All Might said as he began handing out gifts to all the boys and girls. Now, don't be shy. There's enough for everyone. All Might. I was left in awe at the sight of All Might. Despite having read and watched the series, having the man himself right in front of me in the flesh was a completely different experience. It was as if I was sharing the room with a demigod. I shook my head to stop myself from falling deeper into the mindless recesses of a crazy fan and remembered just who the man was. Okay, enough with the glazing. All Might, or should I say Toshinori Yagi. The very person who held up Japan's society with his presence alone, and the man who lived his whole life doing what was right. A true hero. I wondered if this is what it would feel like if I ever shared the same room with Superman, too. Then again, All Might is this world's Superman. But the largest question in my mind right now was why someone of his caliber was at an orphanage. My orphanage. I looked around and saw a distinct lack of cameras and reporters, so this wasn't a PR stunt. Not that All Might would do something like that. But still, why was he here? All Might. All Might. Can I have your autograph? Oh, I want one, too. Me too. Me too. Several dozen voices began to chant and beg for the man's autograph. All Might looked around at all the children and then kneeled on the ground with a large, friendly smile. Of course. I'll be more than happy to. I walked over and leaned on one of the far walls and watched as All Might began to give everyone who wanted one an autograph. He even signed some of the presents he brought as well. How kind of All Might to do this for the kids. I looked over to the side to see the orphanage's principal director standing beside one of the caretakers. Her face was weathered and kind, as her brown hair had hints of grey. He already does enough, being one of our most generous donors. He really is Japan's greatest hero. I see. So that's how it is. I looked down at my shoes and listened to the excited chatter and yells from the children. So, All Might is a large part of why we all have a roof over our heads and warm food in our bellies. It was at that moment that my respect for the man grew even larger. Does he do this for several other orphanages or help centers? Or could it be? Could it be because of guilt? During that horrible incident that caused me and several others here to be orphans, All Might was one of the heroes at the scene who helped with the evacuation. I wasn't saved by him when it happened. No, I was personally saved by Uwabami. So All Might is here to check on us or something close to that. I shook my head with a smile. The man is a bleeding heart. All right. Shimizu Shonin. I jumped at the sudden loud and very close voice of the #1 hero as he stood in front of me with a kind smile. In his large hand was a gift-wrapped present. I believe you haven't received a gift yet. Here, I hope you enjoy it. His eyes then zeroed in on the wound on my hand. Are you okay, young man? You know, my name. I said as I accepted the gift with a grateful bow. All Might nodded and chuckled. I then looked down at my hand. The wound had clotted already, and the makings of a scab began to form. Oh, I just got this. Playing a game. All Might nodded at my answer and mumbled something about kids being kids. Of course I do, Shimizu Shonin. I know all of your names. All Might said as he looked back at several of the children as they opened and played with their gifts. That over there is Fumiko Shoujo, Akito Shonin, Hidemi Shonin, Kanoko Shoujo, Junpei Shonin. I listened as he continued to name every single child in the room, much to my surprise. He got each and every single name correct. After living here with everyone for 2 years, I knew them all well. That's amazing, I mumbled. I can't believe you remember them all. All Might nodded at my words and rested his hands on his hips. It's the least I can do. Hey, All Might. I looked up at the large man. Thanks for giving this place money. I guess I have you to thank for all that broccoli they feed us. Plus 100 SP. So many. All Might looked briefly surprised, but it was quickly hidden by a boastful laugh. Ha! You're welcome, Shimizu Shonin. Think nothing of it. Anything to help the next generation. I guess the saying don't meet your heroes doesn't apply to you, All Might, I said with a grin as I looked down at my gift. Plus 150 SP. That's quite the compliment, Shimizu Shonin. All Might said with a grin as he looked around the room. Hopefully, I can continue to live up to that standard. Being a hero is much more than just beating up villains or looking cool. It's also about helping those in need and lending a hand to your community. I smiled at him and nodded. Who would have thought that All Might was even more impressive in person? He truly had a heart of gold. It's no wonder society relied on him so heavily. He was a hero. After watching my fellow orphans have fun with their gifts, All Might nodded and looked up at the clock. Plus 100 SP. It seems I have to go now, Shimizu Shonin. All Might said with a loud voice, gaining everyone's attention. I'm off to continue my patrols through the city. Or, really? Don't go, All Might. Please. Please. All Might laughed and saluted us all. Ha ha. I'm afraid not. You all. Someone could be out there that needs to be saved. Now then, be sure to eat your vegetables and get plenty of sleep. In a burst of wind that caused loose papers and hair to flutter, All Might disappeared in a burst of pure speed. I blinked in confusion at the sheer level of speed All Might had and turned to the now open doors towards the back of the cafeteria. Despite being sad at the fact that the number one hero was now gone, everyone still looked happy that he had paid us all a visit. I looked down at my All Might-themed gift-wrapped present. I shook the gift as was tradition and shrugged. In one swift motion, I tore off the wrapping paper and chuckled at what I received. It was a limited edition Prime All Might figurine. On the bottom was a sticker that stated it was one of 5 that were released worldwide. Hair. This is something that bushy-haired nerd would go crazy about. I chuckled and looked over to see Keiko dancing around with a light blue All Might-themed hoodie. Now then, I have some more points I can spend. With the limited edition figure in hand, I made my way out of the cafeteria and headed to my room. 4 years later, the bustling city streets were filled with a steady stream of people, each one seemingly in a hurry to get to their destination. The sounds of car horns, chatter, and footsteps filled the air as pedestrians weaved through the crowded sidewalks. Tall buildings loomed overhead, casting long shadows over the bustling streets below. The occasional street performer added a touch of music to the urban symphony while the smell of street food wafted through the air, tempting passers-by. Amidst the chaos, a sense of purpose and determination seemed to drive each person forward, creating a captivating energy that pulsed through the city. That was until a large explosion and thundering cracks filled the air due to 4 individuals dressed in dark outfits. One of the darkly dressed individuals was crashing through brick walls and parked cars with reckless abandon with his great strength. The man had a large body that seemed to be made up of sharp blue-colored stones. His heavy footsteps caused rumbles to rock the streets as he continued his charge. The next individual was covered in a black bodysuit as purple flames covered his hands and feet. Using his flames, the man was capable of pushing his body through the air to allow him to fly. Occasionally, he threw small fireballs at the cars lining the street, causing them to explode. Luckily, no one was standing near the vehicles when they exploded. Gliding on some sort of invisible flying disc a few feet behind the two was a woman with bright blonde hair who had a large grin on her face. On her shoulder was a large bag filled with money that occasionally let loose a few loose bills through the air as she maneuvered in and out for now panicking city folk. Lastly, a thin man with extremely long and stretchy limbs used his body to move over everyone below him with maneuvers resembling a slinky. The man's extremely stretchy limbs made it easy for him to move with great speed and precision. This allowed him to move out of the way just in time as the lion hero, Shishido, swiped the air from where he once stood. Shishido's hero costume resembled a lion, with long, spiky, brown hair that appeared like the manner of a lion. On his costume was a large amount of golden fur, with several spikes both in front and on his back, positioned so that they resemble fangs, and a black mouth with exposed teeth that resemble a lion's maw. Ha! Some hero. You're slow as shit. The man with the elastic quirk yelled as he laughed at the chasing pro-hero. Rah! Shishido growled in anger as he looked over to see the large man covered in a blue-colored stone crash through another car, nearly crushing a woman alongside her young child. Seeing this, Shishido grew even more enraged and pushed his legs to go even faster. Stop at once, you villains. The lion-themed hero exploded forward and flew under the elastic villain, much to the stretchy man's surprise. Shishido's goal was for the woman to glide through the streets. But just as he was about to reach the blonde woman, she looked back and raised her hand in front of her. Gah! Shishido grunted as he crashed headfirst into an invisible barrier. Ha! Is this really what pro-heroes are capable of? How funny! The woman laughed as she and her 3 partners in crime all laughed and continued to run. Shishido shook his head as blood ran down his forehead. Damn you, fearsome 4. I won't let you get away. He then stood up and continued the chase. As he ran, he yelled for everyone on the streets to get out of the way for their safety. This all happened as I leaned against one of the walls of this street's local bookstore with my hands in the front pockets of my black and red hoodie. "These 4 clowns are going to get away if another hero doesn't show up soon," I said as I watched their retreating forms disappear around the corner. Anyways, what was I doing? Right, looking for work. I ignored the chaos around me as people looked at the destruction caused by the fleeing villains and lone hero. Now, then. Despite being 11 years old and the legal working age in Japan being 15, I still had hope I could find a shop that would hire me for some cheap child labor. I wasn't particularly concerned about how much I would get paid as long as I got paid. A question anyone would ask in this situation would be why an 11-year-old middle schooler needs a job. The answer, you simpleton, is for money. Being an orphan didn't necessarily come with a weekly allowance. To be able to complete my goals and ambitions, I needed money. One of the said goals was to have a steady stream of passive income. The way I planned to accomplish that was to begin selling my own written stories and manga from my original world. Considering most of the most prolific and famous works from my world didn't exist here, it was a guaranteed way to make some dough. Oh, so you're doing what most reincarnated people do in these types of situations? How original. I hear you saying, yes. Yes, I am. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. Jumping over some rubble, I stopped when I saw an elderly woman struggle to get to her feet. Before I could decide what to do, an older girl in a high school uniform jogged over to the elderly lady and helped her up. Seeing that, I continued onto the street filled with several shops a few blocks away. As an orphan, I knew it was only a matter of time before the orphanage would no longer be able to support me once I came of age. Meaning I had 4 or 5 years left until I got kicked out onto the streets with nothing but some pity money and a bus pass. This only made my need for money even more imperative. I needed money to fund my art supplies and writing tools. Without those, I could never bring my stolen stories to life for me to sell to a publisher. If only I could have gotten adopted. Then I wouldn't have to do this. Normally, a cute and handsome, well-behaved boy like myself would have been adopted years ago like my many orphan siblings, like Keiko. However, due to what happened to me 4 years ago, my body passively releases a slow and steady stream of negative energy that scared away any hopeful parents from adopting me. Then again, most people tended to avoid me due to my negative energy as well. Bad vibes, I heard some say. Said negative energy was my cursed energy. I paused in my trek and waited alongside many others for the passing cars to stop at an intersection. As we stood patiently, some of the people closest to me began to step away from me slightly. Their expressions were nervous and anxious. I paid them no mind. Once the cars stopped due to the red light, the do not cross sign changed to walk, allowing us all to cross the street. Even after 4 years, I was only able to pull 2 other techniques besides the boogie woogie. I muttered as I finally reached the busy shopping and service center located in my city of Hamamatsu. The sound of clinking marbles could be heard from my hip, where a small black bag was tied to my belt. Then again, I did get a lot of lesser skills and items, so I guess it's okay. Not like I was able to rack up the points to spend for the higher tier rewards. Besides the boogie woogie, I had managed to pull 2 other cursed techniques. One of the techniques was Big Bro Choso's blood manipulation. Blood manipulation allows me to control and shape my blood beyond its natural form or motion for a variety of effects. It can be used to manipulate every aspect of the user's blood, including blood composition, internal blood flow, plasma, pulse rate, body temperature, and red blood cells. The technique allows the user to control blood externally as long as it belongs to the user. The external blood can be hardened to create mid-range projectiles and/or objects that the user desires. This is called convergence. In the hands of a competent sorcerer like Big Bro Choso, it has the potential to be an incredibly useful technique. It was the skill that allowed Choso to stand against Urom and False Ghetto for a brief amount of time. Unfortunately, I don't have the same potential as Choso due to my normal human body. I could only use so much of my blood before I would pass out. Something I learned the hard way. My third technique was Tokuma Aino's auspicious beast summons. In order to use this technique, I had to hide my face using a mask, which was the reason I had a black mask with white Spider-Man-like eyes in my back pocket. This would then allow me to become a spiritual medium that can summon forth for auspicious beasts to use their abilities with CE. The beasts were Kai, Riki, Kirin, and Ryu. Number 1, Kai, would allow me to summon a horn covered in a spiral pattern on it. I can use it as a long-ranged homing projectile cloaked in CE, and it won't stop until it hits my intended target, like a blue shell from Super Mario. Number 2, Riki, would allow me to cover my body in cursed water that I can use to cushion myself from danger and or increase my overall mobility. Pretty much turning any environment into an ice rink while giving me a protective layer of armor. Number 3, Kirin, allows me to fight with a massively reduced sense of pain, but it will also cause my stamina to be drained away. The downside to this beast is when my intended goal for summoning it is completed, I'll be left unable to function for a limited amount of time, which would make using this beast in a fight against multiple opponents a risky move. Number 4, Ryu, the last auspicious beast, summons a large serpentine dragon-like creature that will crash into my intended target to deal a large amount of damage. However, like in its fight against Suguna in JJK, if enough damage is dealt to the dragon, it will be forced to disappear. It's something I don't really have to worry about here since I'm the only one who can perceive beasts powered by CE. Trust me, I tested it. I had walked around this very city with Ryu flying above my head. The most his presence did was give the public a sense of anxiety and unreasonable fear. All in all, the technique is pretty much like the baby brother of the 10 Shadows technique without the need to defeat them in a ritual in order to use them. These two techniques were gold tier items I had managed to pull over the course of 4 years. After all, saving up the minimal points from my everyday interactions was a slow and annoying process. I had thought of ways to increase my social points faster, but that would mean finding any of the main cast members from MHA. Something that is by no means easy to do in a country as big as Japan while being a little kid. Another discovery I made once I had all 3 techniques was that I automatically had a perfect understanding of how to use them like their original owners. It was as if I had trained my entire life on how to use them. This is something I didn't realize when I first used Boogie Woogie due to my sheer excitement at having the technique and my gacha-based system. Besides those techniques, I had also pulled mostly clothes and junk from the show. Some examples are Moki's glasses, Yuji's Jujutsu high jacket, Gojo's round sunglasses, and even Geto's wooden sandals. The only other helpful reward I got from my pulls was Yuta's swordsmanship skills. While really amazing, it was an impractical skill until I got my hands on a real katana. And for that, I needed money. Or I could just steal one. But for now, I had to make do with creating a katana construct using my blood. Over the 4 years, I also trained and improved my mastery of my CE. Using what I knew from the series and the advice and teachings from Gojo and Nanami, I was now pretty proficient in imbuing myself and using CE to put me around a grade 2 sorcerer or so. Then again, I didn't really have anyone to tell how well I was doing, so this was mostly conjecture on my part. During that time, I also trained my body to better handle Yuji's martial arts, boosting me to be a pretty decent fighter, given my current age, at least, I thought so. I haven't really been in a fight to check my progress. But if the well-defined muscles on my 11-year-old body were anything to go off by, I think I was doing pretty good for myself. What a slow 4 years. I have to find someone from the main cast. I need to start earning some real SP. I released a long sigh and began going store to store to ask if they were willing to break the law, hire me. To my utter shock, no one wanted to hire an 11-year-old for some reason. Wonder why. Despite all those rejections, I pressed on for a few more hours, going from marketplace to marketplace. Sorry, kid. You're too young. Well, I don't think I can hire someone so young. I might get arrested. Where are your parents, little man? This some trick? Get out of here, kid, were some of my responses. With the sun now on the horizon and my curfew coming up, I took a drink of my iced coffee and groaned from my seat on a bench. My spirits were low, and my motivation was even lower. The image of me living under a bridge quickly caused me to hop off the bench with newfound determination. I can't give up, I said as I walked over to the last shop on the street. I just need a few thousand yen to start. That's it. After that, I can sit back and watch the money flow in. With a confident nod, I quickly reached the final shop on this street and looked up at the sign. only to take a step back in shock at the name. Hatsume's Mechanical Repairs and such. Hatsume? As in Hatsumai? Holy shit! I uttered in surprise and looked into the surprisingly big shop store. The inside of the store was equipped with several tools and machinery for repairing, maintaining, and servicing vehicles and machinery. The workshop was equipped with tools such as wrenches, sockets, jacks, and power tools, as well as machinery like hydraulic lifts, air compressors, and diagnostic equipment. The shelves on the walls were lined with several different pieces of equipment and refurbished appliances being sold for a cheaper price. There were a few customers inside the store, either browsing or talking to a large, burly man with long pink hair pulled up into a man bun. Off at the back was a young girl around my age with shoulder-length pink hair and yellow eyes. A large pair of goggles, much too big for her, sat on the top of her head lopsidedly. The little girl was sitting on a tall stool while working on a large steel box with several mechanical parts strewn all around the table she was working on. However, what caught my attention the most was the crudely drawn "Help Wanted" sign on the glass window beside the main door. This is my chance. If I can get hired here, I can make money and earn a lot of SP. I clenched my fist and pumped myself up. After taking a deep breath, I plastered a confident expression on my face and entered the store. Sorry, kid. I'm looking for someone who knows their way around everyday appliances. You got that skill set? That was my intelligent response. The man behind the counter, Hatsu Minato, chuckled at me and patted my shoulder. When he was done, I saw a few new black soot stains on my shoulder. It's getting late, kid. Best you go off home before your parents get worried about you. Please. I placed my hands on the old, worn-down counter as Minato began to walk over to a shelf stacked full of boxes full of mechanical parts. I can learn. Seriously, I'm pretty smart, and I can pick things up fast. I just need a shot. Minato looked over his broad shoulder and shook his head. Sorry, kid. Even if I wanted to, you're like, what? 10? I can't hire you based on that. It's illegal. Damn you, Japan's laws. Why must you be so considerate? I gritted my teeth and clenched my fists tightly in frustration. Off behind me, I heard the cackles of Mai as several loud clangs from a hammer echoed loudly. Don't give up, me. Do I really have to use that card? I'm 11. Also, you don't have to pay me a full wage. I'll even accept 700 yen an hour. Please. I bowed my entire body while I used my most pathetic and sorrow-sounding voice for the most empathy. Minato looked over to me with a remorseful look as he carried a box. +5 SP. Ha. Sorry, kid. Can't do it. He sighed and looked out his shop's glass windows. With a nod, he walked over to the yellow phone that was on the counter and brought it up to his ear. Listen, kid, I'll call your parents to come get you. It's gotten too dark for me to comfortably send you out. Some real sketchy people are out there these days. What's their number? I guess I have to use that card after all. The orphan card. Don't got any. What's that? Minato raised a brow in confusion. Speak up, kid. I don't have any parents. I'm an orphan. I said with a sad but angry expression. They died during the Iwata incident a few years back. +5 SP, I see, Minato whispered, his eyes briefly looking over to where his daughter was working. I'm sorry. I don't need any pity or empathy. I looked up into his surprised eyes. I just need a chance. Let me prove to you that I can do what you need me to do. Please. I don't want to be homeless in a few years. So, please. Let me prove to you that I can do this. +5 SP. Minato stood still for several moments and maintained eye contact with me with a serious expression. I didn't flinch or look away and kept eye contact with the large man. I didn't want to have to use my orphan status to get a job, but I couldn't let this opportunity go. I had to use this chance to earn SP by interacting with Mai. She was the only person I've run into besides All Might in the past 11 years who could give me the points I needed. Seeing as she was around my age or younger, I finally had a good grasp of where I was in the timeline. At most, I only had 5 or 6 years before the major events from the plot started. If I wanted to be able to survive and thrive in this world, I had to pull more gold and diamond tier rewards. Because in this world, power meant everything. I need to pull the limitless technique and the 6 eyes. With that power, I would become untouchable. Nothing could stop me from living the easygoing and wealthy life I wanted. And to do that, I had to become one of Japan's top heroes. Is that really what I want? Minato closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose, missing my startled and confused expression. I then heard him whisper something along the lines of, "I can't believe I'm doing this." "Fine. I'll hire you," Minato said, reaching inside the box of mechanical parts he had brought over and pulling out a thick manual for a fridge and a large textbook about mechanical engineering. "But only on the condition you're capable of putting one of these together from scattered parts. Do that, and I'll hire you as an apprentice. This way, you can be paid, and I won't get in trouble with the law. Hopefully, you can come here after school to watch and learn from me so that you can accomplish your assignment. How does that sound?" I accepted the books from his hands and flipped through the several pages full of information and mechanical jargon. I nodded and looked up at him with confident eyes. "That sounds great. Thank you very much. I won't fail you, Hatsume-san," I said with a deep, respectful bow. +5 SP. Despite being practically guilt-tripped into this, Minato nodded with a smile and grabbed a blue jacket from one of the chairs near the wall. "We'll see, kid. Come on, I'll take you over to where you live." My. Of all nicknames, my, HM, was the pink-haired girl's response. "I'm heading out, so I'll be locking up early. I'll be back in a few minutes. Try not to blow up the shop." "Okay," Minato said as he guided me to the front door. "Okay. Can you bring back some more ball bearings and an electric actuator?" Mai called out without stopping to look at us, too entrenched in her project. "My adorable baby is almost complete." "Ah, I almost forgot. That's my daughter, Mai," Minato told me as we watched the young inventor work with an intense focus. "If I'm too busy, you can ask her any questions. She could put one of those fridges together once she turned 4, so I advise you to learn from her, too." "At 4, I muttered as I flipped through the thick and complicated manual. That wasn't surprising, considering what she would accomplish at UA in the future. "I see. I'll be sure to ask her for help then. Just a small warning, though." Minato smiled awkwardly as he rubbed the side of his head. "My daughter is a bit eccentric. You'll understand soon. Okay, let's get you home." "Right." As Minato and I left the store, Mai stopped her machinations and looked back at our retreating forms with a confused expression. Shrugging, she slid her goggles over her eyes and grabbed a pair of fine tweezers to twist a tiny wire into place. One of the first things I learned about Hatsume Mai was that she was a big ball of weirdness. "How's this?" You have the green and red wire in the wrong terminal points," Mai said as she rolled back over to her work area to resume working on her project, or as she likes to call it, her baby. I also learned that she was much more brilliant and creative than the original series gave her credit for. +10 SP. I nodded and quickly fixed my mistake. Once I did, I saw the control board finally light up. I thanked Mai and received a quick which was more than I got during my first week of working learning under Minato and Mai. During that period, she mostly ignored me as if I wasn't there, too entrenched in her babies to pay attention to the new individual who now shared her space. I placed down my wire cutters and grabbed a screwdriver to tighten down a loose screw. From there, I continued working on the fridge compressor while keeping an eye on the control board every now and then. During my time at Hatsume's mechanical repairs and such, I had come to understand the fact that I was pretty damn intelligent. Even more so than I originally thought. I had always thought my intelligence was decent, if not slightly higher than average, due to my ability to get straight A's at school constantly on any subject, but I never really applied myself beyond school. I was so entrenched in training my CE and techniques that I never paid much attention to training my mental strengths. However, now faced with the opportunity to push myself to go beyond what I thought was possible, I finally found out that I could apply my intelligence to learning pretty much whatever I wanted and quickly. If my progress in understanding complex engineering problems was anything to go off of. Sure, I was no Tony Stark, but I was well on my way to becoming a decent mechanical engineer, which was probably the reason why my had recently started acknowledging me as more than dull eyes and began using my actual name. "All right, you too," Minato said as he walked over to the back of his store where Mai and I were working. He was using an old rag to clean his hands. "Time for a break. You've been back here working for 3 hours now. Go out and stretch your legs. Touch some grass." "No way. My baby isn't ready yet," Mai said with a giant smile as she continued working on a large mechanical boot. "Can't do it." Mai. Minato said slowly and grabbed the screwdriver out of her hands. The 10-year-old inventor gasped in horror and tried to take her tool back, but her father's greater stature caused her to just flail around uselessly. I leaned back on my stool and watched as Mai continued to try to take back her tool. Minato then looked over at me and my assignment with approving eyes. "Not bad. You're halfway there. You weren't lying when you said you were a fast learner," Minato said as he placed the screwdriver next to Mai's project but quickly picked her up to stop her from getting back to work. Another couple of days, and you'll be done. You may have a future at this." "Ah, thank you, Hatsume-san," I said with a small smile as I rubbed the back of my head. I felt a little bashful since I didn't really receive compliments, just jeers or jokes over my being quirkless. So this was a nice change of pace. It is in large part thanks to Mai. She's brilliant. And don't you forget it. Mai said with a smile as she gave up trying to escape her father's hold. "See, Papa, if you let us keep going, we can finish his baby by tomorrow. Just put me down and dash nice try there, Mai. Out you two kids go." I got up and followed after Minato as he carried a despondent Mai towards the front door. Stepping outside to the bustling street, he placed Mai down and turned to me with a small smile. "Here, get yourself some ice cream or something. I don't want to see you two until 5 o'clock. Got it?" Minato said as he handed me a few bills. I nodded at him and placed the money into one of my pockets. "Got it. I'll be sure to walk Mai through the park so she can touch some grass." +5 SP, good man, Minato said and patted his daughter's shoulder. "Go on, sweetheart." But my babies." "No buts. Now go on, you two." I walked over and grabbed Mai's wrist to begin pulling her toward a park a few blocks away. Mai sniffed and rubbed her eyes as she followed behind me. This was something we grew used to doing after a few days of me starting my apprenticeship. Minato had discovered that I was a great way to get Mai out of the shop to get some fresh air. I didn't mind doing this, considering I owed the man for the opportunity of being hired to work for him once I was done with the fridge. It was also a great way to net some points. Hey, Sauter. Let's sneak back in. I'll help you finish your baby so you can start working at the shop." "Can't do that. Your father will find out, and we'll get in trouble." You're probably right. Okay. New plan. We sneak back in, and I continue working on my baby while you keep a lookout. How does that benefit me? It doesn't. I squinted my eyes at her and sighed. Pulling her along, we continued onward toward the park. Much to her displeasure, despite that, she continued following me and didn't attempt to pull her wrist free to make a run for it. It was mostly due to all her past attempts resulting in failure. Using my CE, catching up to her was easy. So, after a while, she threw in the towel and decided to just give in to her fate, which was unfortunate for me. The points from our chases were plentiful. Soon enough, I would be able to pull for 2 diamond tier pulls with all my saved up points. After a couple more minutes, we finally reached the park we visited every time Minato kicked us out. We did go to other places, sometimes, like the beach, but neither Mai nor I enjoyed going there, mostly due to the sand. It was coarse and rough and irritating, and it got everywhere, making the park our go-to spot. With it being Sunday today, the park was well occupied by visiting families and kids around our age. I looked over to the familiar ice cream stand to see the stand owner, a friendly old man named Sojiro, handing out ice cream to several small children. Nodding, I turned to Mai. "Wanna get some ice cream?" I said as I waved the money Minato gave me. Despite her desire to be at the shop rather than here, Mai quickly smiled and nodded her head. She had a pretty large sweet tooth. Sure, might as well. Oh, I want to try that orange-looking flavor today. Let's go get some then. I let go of her wrist, and we walked over to the vendor. Hello, Sojiro-san. I'll have a vanilla ice cream. And I'll have that funky-looking orange one. Sojiro chuckled at Mai's words and nodded. After scooping our orders into 2 small paper cups, he handed us each our ice cream, which I quickly paid him for. After thanking him, Mai and I walked over to a shady spot under a large tree and took a seat on the grass. I was careful not to sit on my bag of marbles that was on my belt. Mai happily ate her ice cream with a smile, seemingly enjoying the new flavor she chose. Hey, Mai, I asked as I scooped some ice cream into my mouth. HM. She responded with a spoon in her mouth. What do you plan on doing in the future? I asked as I watched several children playing the game Hero several feet away. They were using their quirks to try and attack a little boy with a mutant-type quirk. The boy himself had the physical appearance of a bumblebee, making him look quite monstrous. In my opinion, it seemed like the kid wasn't having much fun but played along just to fit in. The future, Mai said with a hum. That didn't last long because she quickly got into my personal space with a large smile, causing me to lean back. This was nothing new. She had no understanding of what personal space was. It's obvious, isn't it? I'm going to become the world's greatest inventor. To do that, I'm going to have to show off all of my babies to the world and future investors. No better place to do that than being at UA in the support course. Plus 15 SP. I nodded and looked down at my half-eaten treat. UA. So that's where you want to go. Mai nodded and turned to me with a raised brow. What do you want to do? Oh. Do you want to join the support course too? Is that why you begged Papa to be able to work for him? I didn't necessarily beg. Yeah, you did. Gah. I closed my eyes at the embarrassing memory from 2 weeks ago and looked away from her crosshair yellow eyes. No, that's not necessarily why. I just needed a job, that's all. Because you're an orphan, right? Mai said with little thought and suddenly froze. A rare look of embarrassment took over her face. Sorry about that. Plus 25 SP. I smiled at her and shook my head. It's okay, Mai. But yeah, due to my situation, I needed money, so I had to get a job. I see. Mai muttered as she placed her empty cup down and pulled her knees to her chest. A brief moment of awkward silence hung over us as we sat. Looking over at her, I placed a hand on her shoulder and gave her a few pats. Relax, Mai. I'm not mad. I know you didn't mean it like that. Despite the way Mai acts, which is usually hyper-focused and seemingly uncaring for others, she was actually a pretty thoughtful person underneath the whole crazed inventor shtick. She just had a tough time expressing herself. This is a fact most would never learn due to them giving up on getting to know her better due to her loud personality. But after working alongside her every day for 2 weeks and knowing the way she'd grow up to be, I had a better time understanding and getting her to talk on topics other than inventing or her babies. It's how she learned to become comfortable with me in such a short amount of time. A fact that shocked her mother and father, causing them to invite me to dinner every now and then. They were nice people. Even when I told them I was quirkless, they didn't treat me any differently. Then, what do you want to do in the future? Mai asked with a rare look of intrigue you'd never find on her unless she was talking about her babies. I want to live an easy life and be rich, I said without a hint of shame and laid down on my back to watch the blue sky above. A large grin grew on my face as I envisioned my future. Mai smiled and nodded at my answer. How do you plan to do that? By becoming a hero, is what I wanted to say. But for the past week or so, I've been questioning that line of thinking. Why exactly did I want to become a hero? At first, it was because of the potential the top pro heroes could earn in revenue. The sheer amounts of cash one could make from all the sponsorships, brand deals, and endorsements were mouth-watering to me. So, with that in mind, why am I even debating doing it? I wanted money. So why not go with the option that will all but guarantee large amounts of it? I knew in time that I would accumulate several dozen cursed techniques and skills from the Gacha system that would allow me to be a pretty diverse fighter and hero. With that in mind, shouldn't becoming a hero be the obvious choice? No, not exactly. In the series All Might, Toshinori Yagi dedicated his entire life to becoming the symbol of peace, sacrificing his personal happiness and chances of true meaningful relationships to uphold justice and society itself. All up to the point of being disemboweled and having society turn on its head at the slightest inconvenience. Endeavor, Todoroki Enji, became a man overcome with greed and jealousy in his pursuit to be the #1 hero and surpass All Might. In his journey to do so, he essentially bought a wife so she could bear his children with him in order to create the ultimate quirked human to surpass All Might, scarring and abusing his children. Hawks, Takomi Kigo, was groomed from his childhood after being sold off by his mother to the Hero Public Safety Commission to become their perfect little puppet due to the sheer potential of his quirk. Not to mention that due to his duty to the HPSC, Hawks ended up killing twice in cold blood. I could go on and on about how heroes from this society weren't true heroes at all. Sure, there were some that were genuine in their desire to do what was right, like All Might and Midoriya, but a few good apples don't make up for a rotten batch. Maybe Stain had a point after all. Then again, he was a murdering psycho who deemed himself judge, jury, and executioner. But still, he had a point. Wouldn't I, someone only interested in becoming wealthy, be proving him right? Why, then, should I become a hero if not for the sake of truly being one? So, I decided to change course. Instead of putting my safety and well-being in jeopardy to become a hero in the hopes of becoming wealthy, why not focus on creating stories and pieces of entertainment that I know will guarantee me loads of money? I'll still use my gacha system to strengthen myself for when shit hits the fan. I don't want to get killed when Shigaraki All for One starts destroying the country. I know some would call my decision a waste. Why accumulate all these skills and abilities if you're not going to use them? I was in the perfect setting. So why not? Well, it was because I wasn't a shonen hero whose heart beats and bleeds for justice and righteousness. I was in no hurry to save cats from trees or yell about friendship or the sort. I'll leave that for Midoriya. He's got this. At least, I think he does. I doubt Horikoshi killed him in the end or took his powers or anything along those lines. He was a shonen protagonist, so everything will work itself out. I'm going to write and sell books, I said with a smile. That's how. Books. Mai jumped at me and leaned over my body with an incredulous look. That's so boring. Why don't you just make babies like me? That's a much more fun way to get famous and make money. I know. I can take you on as my assistant. I pushed Mai's face away as she was growing much too close for comfort. To those around us, it was starting to look like we were a bold young couple unafraid of getting touchy in public the way she was pinning me under her. I couldn't have that because I liked this park. I didn't want the people here to think that Mai and I were some perverted couple. I glanced over to Sojiro and saw him give me a thumbs up. Oi, it's not like that, you old geezer. How generous. To be the assistant to Hatsume Mai. What an honor. I knew you'd see it my way. So you accept? Nope. Mai threw a handful of grass at my face. At the sound of the school bell, everyone in the classroom began packing their stuff to head home. Some cliques were discussing what to do or where to go. Other students headed toward their after-school clubs. At the front, the teacher began to organize and gather all the work from their busy day to start the slow grading process. Still in my chair, I lifted my arms above my head and stretched them. Hearing a few pops from my stiff joints, I sighed in relief and stood up. Grabbing my bag, I walked out of the classroom to head towards my job, or if a police officer asked, my apprenticeship. Heh. Who knew breaking the law was so rewarding? Oh, criminals and villains did. No wonder they did it. It's been around 3 weeks since I completed my fridge assignment, much to Minato's approval. He was genuinely impressed that I could complete the fridge within 3 weeks of watching and observing him or Mai. He was so impressed that he placed me in charge of refurbishing and repairing all appliances brought to the store workshop. It was a large responsibility that pushed me to continue learning. It didn't hurt that the pay was good. Minato didn't start paying 700 yen like I originally asked during our initial professional interview. No, Minato began my hourly wage at 2,000 yen. How generous of the guy. Thanks to my generous wage, I was able to buy the materials I needed to start working on the drafts for the stories I planned on writing. I decided to begin with writing and selling 3 books before moving on to work on making the manga I had planned. Thankfully, my ability to draw from my previous life carried over, so I had confidence that I could pull this off. I just needed to save up some more money for the art supplies I needed to get. In terms of my planned books, I had already completed the first entries for 2 of my books, with my third one halfway done. The 3 stories I wanted to tell were the novelizations of Star Wars, Harry Potter, and The Hunger Games. These were some of the most prolific works from my world that had sold millions on their own, with successful movies to go along with them. When I had finished my first 2 books, my next challenge was to find a publisher that would take a chance at taking me in. So, instead of searching for one in person and being brushed off due to my age, I decided to use the internet to find a publisher. I started off by selling 1 book instead of 2. That way, I could ask for much more money on my next book once the publisher saw how much money my stories could make. The Hunger Games series would be my first work as an author. With that in mind, I began sending the first 5 chapters of the book to several publishers I found online under the pen name Gidge and waited to see who would bite the bait. I didn't have to wait long because, after a few days, I received several offers from at least half of all the publishers I contacted. At that point, all I had to do was play my cards right and choose the best offer. It didn't hurt that I mentioned to my potential publishers that they were currently competing for the rights to my story, causing them to double their offers for my story. Having my pick of the litter, I chose the offer from a publisher in America, where I would receive an advance of $65,000 and 8% of the royalties from each copy of the book sold. It wasn't a lot, but that was mostly due to me being a new and unknown author. But for an orphan with little money, it was enough to start. Now, all I had to do was wait for my new publisher to begin selling my book to the public, which should be in a few weeks from now. At that point, all I had to do was sit back and watch the money flow into my bank account. Reaching the shoe lockers, I switched out my indoor shoes for my old outdoor sneakers and walked outside. I came to a stop in front of a bike rack near the entrance of the school but stopped when my ears picked up a far-off noise. I looked over to the side of the school, where I saw 4 students walk around the corner. 2 of the students had their arms over the shoulders of a short boy with a mutant-type quirk that gave him the appearance of a hunchbacked ogre. Come on. We want to talk. But I have to go home huh? What the hell do you say, freak? Didn't you hear, KG? We just want to talk. I squinted my eyes where the 4 disappeared and shrugged. This wasn't really my problem, so there was no need to get involved. If I did, I could risk getting those bozos to focus on me due to me being quirkless. It's not like I don't have my own set of hecklers to worry about or anything. Most of what they did was call me names and petty stuff like that, but it never escalated from that. I mean, there was that one time one of them got physical, but he mysteriously ended up unconscious behind the school with a bag of drugs that somehow ended up in his school bag, causing him to be expelled when one of the staff found him after receiving an anonymous tip. How terrible. Just as I was about to leave the front gates of my school, I found my legs frozen and unwilling to move. I stared down at my sneakers with a heavy frown and sighed. Turning around, I began to head off towards where the 4 students went. Mutant discrimination. It was a significant problem no one wanted to talk about in this society. Those with mutant-type quirks were treated like second-class citizens just for the fact that their quirks made them look so different from regular humans. Shoji, Spinner, and that fox lady Midoriya saved when society collapsed came to mind whenever I saw these forms of discrimination. It was just so easy for some people to mistake those with mutations for villains on the simple fact they looked monstrous. It wasn't fair. Hey, Kagawa, you got any money? No. You're not lying to me now, are you? No. I swear. I came to a stop around the corner of a rather desolate spot behind the school and peered back at the scene ahead. The boy with the ogre-like mutation, Kagawa, I think I heard them say, was against a wall with the other 3 students encircling him. From their looks, they were a year or 2 older than us, making them our upperclassmen. They each had these amused and predatory looks as they watched Kagawa squirm under their gazes. One of the boys, the one with short red hair and eyes, held up his left hand next to Kagawa's ear and lit a small pathetic fire no bigger than a match on his palm. You better not be lying to us, Kagawa. I don't have to remind you what I do to liars. Kagawa jumped and squealed as the red-haired asshole slowly brought the fire closer to his ear. I swear. I'm not lying. I used it all up at lunch. That's so. The boy with brushed back purple hair said with a thoughtful look. He was what one could call handsome. But to me, he looked uglier than a pile of dog shit. Very well. We believe you. Ah, really? I dash from now on. You won't be eating lunch. Instead, you'll be giving me your money every day. Purple Shit Stain said with an easy smile. Got it. But Kagawa was interrupted when the last of the three stooges kicked him directly in the stomach, causing Kagawa to hunch over and hold his stomach in pain. The boy who kicked him had spiky black hair and serrated teeth. Let's call him Dips Hit. Shut it, freak. Dips Hit grabbed Kagawa's short brown hair and yanked his head up so he could look at Dipshit's angry face. Didn't you hear what Nobuyuki said? Kagawa closed his eyes and tried to look away but was once again yanked by his hair. Tears were now flowing from his mismatched eyes. Okay, that's enough, I said while I approached the four with my hands in my pockets. They all turned to look at me in surprise and slight fear, but the three bullies quickly relaxed when they noticed I was not a teacher. It's the quirkless loser, Dipshit said as he walked over to stand next to the red-haired asshole, who looked amused. Purple Shit Stain looked over to me and then over to Kagawa with a smile. +5 SP, +5 SP, +5 SP. This a friend of yours, Shimizu? I didn't respond but continued walking toward them, causing Purple Shit Stain to frown. I have two options available to me right now. One option was to go grab a teacher and tell them what was going on, letting the adults handle the situation. Option 2 was to ask these clowns to kindly stop bullying Kagawa. This will cause them to reflect on their actions and, in the end, make them change their ways. Hey, we're talking to slap. +5 SP. Dipshit's face rippled as my open palm slapped him across the face, sending him rolling across the ground. His eyes were blank, and a large red welt began to grow on his cheek. I choose option 3, I said as I continued walking toward the other two shocked bullies, their wide eyes locked on their unconscious friend. I choose violence. What slap? +5 SP. Hold on, you can't just slap. +5 SP. Down on the ground with red welts on their unconscious faces were the last two bullies. Purple Shit Stain and the red-haired asshole were both lying face down on the dirt. One of them even wet their pants. I huffed and looked over to a frozen, wide-eyed Kagawa. Oi! Snap out of it, I said and began to leave. I suggest you get out here before the three stooges wake up. Right. Kagawa grabbed his school bag from where it sat and quickly caught up to me as we turned the corner. He held his bag tightly against his chest as he hobbled behind me. I didn't pay him much mind as we left the school grounds. Don't thank me. I interrupted him and came to a stop, causing Kagawa to almost crash into me. I didn't do that to save you. I did that because I hate bullies. So next time, stand up for yourself. Even if that means you'll get your ass kicked. Got that? Kagawa looked at me wide-eyed while his mouth opened and closed silently. In the end, he closed his mouth and nodded quickly. I'm late for work, I muttered and began walking, leaving Kagawa behind. CYA. +10 SP. I continued walking away without turning back to see that Kagawa was now bowing to me as tears streamed down his face. My eyes looked over to a floating screen that displayed my total saved up SP. Total SP, 4,579. Tonight, I finally get to spend my saved up points. Gotta grab some snacks on the way home. I smiled and waved at Minato and Mai as I walked out of the shop's front door once we exchanged our goodbyes. Today had been another busy and productive day at work. Besides interacting with and being subjected to testing out several of Mai's recently completed babies, I had finished refurbishing a microwave and a vacuum cleaner while fixing a toaster an old lady brought in during my precious 15-minute break. Usually, I wouldn't have done that so I could read up on the newest issue of Inventors Monthly featuring David Shield. However, Chio, the old lady who came in, was in charge of the bakery across the street. Chio always gave me a piece of bread or a cookie for free when I passed by, so I was more than happy to help her. Break be damned, those baked goods of hers were to die for. This was why I was now happily chewing on a piece of melon bread on my way home, courtesy of Chio once she saw me step outside. The city was bathed in the soft glow of dusk as I walked through the bustling streets. The fading sunlight painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, casting long shadows across the pavement. The city lights began to flicker to life, creating a warm and inviting atmosphere. People of all shapes and sizes hurried past me, their silhouettes blending into the urban landscape. The distant hum of traffic and the occasional honking of horns filled the air as the city came alive with the energy of the evening. Holy crap! It's the ninja hero, Edgeshot. It's him. It is him. Kia. He's so handsome. I arched an eyebrow and looked down the street, where a large group of people were going crazy over Japan's current number 6 hero. I caught a quick glimpse of the guy and saw that he had the overall appearance of a traditional ninja, like in the original series. What's Stringman doing here? I said as I quickly looked around the area, my melon bread now entirely eaten. I don't see any villain or a cat stuck in a tree. On patrol then. Shrugging my shoulders, I decided to take a different path because there was no way I could walk through all these crazy fans. With my hands in my pockets, I made my way through a nearby alleyway. It was dark, and the air stank due to some built-up garbage, but as long as I could walk home unimpeded, I didn't care. Hey, you, kid. I sighed and looked behind me to see a shady individual walk out of the shadows. He was a tall man dressed in a black trench coat and hood. The hood hid his features as 2 white eyes peered at me from the darkness. I'll be taking all your valuables, the cloaked man said in a deep, scratchy voice. I think the hell not. Hey. The man said, seemingly not expecting me to not be afraid. Dude, I'm 11. What the hell do you think I have of any value? Unless you're a pedophile. I said as I covered my body, my right hand discreetly grabbing one of the marbles from the bag that hung on my belt. You fiend. Pervert. +5 SP. TH. Damn kids. Just give me the bag, and you won't get hurt. The man growled and walked towards me with a knife in his right hand. His larger body loomed dangerously over my much shorter stature. This situation would have rendered most kids my age a shaking, muttering mess. But not me. No, I was a jujutsu sorcerer. Unofficially, of course. I raised my hand and threw the marble at the man. Seeing this, he leaned to the side and chuckled at my pathetic attack. Heh. What was that? A marble-clap. The man's white eyes grew wide when I suddenly appeared beside him, my body momentarily floating in midair as my right fist was coated in CE. He had no time to react, and I threw my fist smack dab in the middle of his face. The man's head snapped back from the force of my punch, and his body tumbled back onto a trash bin. Boogie Woogie is a cursed technique that activates when the user claps their hands together. The technique switches the positions of the user and anything they desire that has above a certain amount of cursed energy. However, due to the apparent lack of CE in this world, I'm unable to switch with anyone, making the Boogie Woogie, a once mighty and versatile technique in the world of JJK, a limited-use technique. The only way I was able to make use of this technique was to switch with items infused with my CE or a cursed tool. Unfortunately, I haven't been lucky enough to have pulled any cursed tools yet. This is why, over the course of 4 years, I've been slowly and carefully creating my own cursed tools in the shape of the bag of marbles I've been carrying every day, thus allowing me to use the Boogie Woogie. "T that hurt, you damn brat," the man said as he shakily stood to his feet. Drops of blood dripped onto the filthy ground from his face as his white eyes glared at me hatefully. "I was just going to rob you. Now I'm going to gut you as well." +5 SP, ooh, scary. I slid down my black Spider-Man mask on my face and got into a fighting stance, CE covering my aching fists. "You're gonna have to catch me first." Despite the seemingly calm disposition I had, I couldn't stop the slight trembles that rocked my body. This was, after all, my first ever encounter with someone who was seemingly willing to end my life. My first real fight. For someone who's lived a relatively normal life so far, this was a scary experience. The only thing calming me down was the bonus feature of having a relaxed mindset in combat, thanks to Yuji's hand-to-hand combat skills and Yuta's swordsmanship skills. Crap. That hurt. What's this guy made of? I shook my hands in an attempt to get rid of the numbness. Die. The large man yelled as he closed the distance in a split second thanks to his long legs. When close, he slashed his knife at me in an attempt to slice my throat. Clap. Gra. I struck the man on his side with a powerful punch and clapped my hands again in order to appear on his left. I spun in the air and landed a kick in the man's face, causing the man to take several steps back. One of his feet rolled out from under him as he stepped on something small and round. I jumped back and winced. Each hit I landed began to hurt my fists or feet. It was as if I was striking solid stone. What? They're all over the floor. The man said in surprise as several of my marbles surrounded him. Just what kind of quirk do you have? Clap. What? You thought I just had one of them? I said as I used blood manipulation to cover my fists in hardened blood once I reappeared to his right. Before he could move, I landed a quick 1-2 combo at his midsection. The man folded over from the pain and flinched when he heard me clap again. His eyes looked around wildly to find my new position, but grew confused when I didn't suddenly appear anywhere close to him. The man's head then jerked to where I originally stood, and he saw that my hands were now outstretched in front of me. Palms pressed together. Convergence. Blood manipulation. Convergence. This skill involves applying pressure to blood in order to compress it to its limit. The blood compressed with convergence is then released through a single point. The initial speed of blood enhanced with CE well exceeds the speed of sound when released. The secret art of blood manipulation has a name. Piercing blood. I released an incredibly fast ray of blood straight at the man's shoulder, causing him to drop his knife. I could have aimed straight for the man's heart, but I had no intention of killing a man today. I knew this was risky, but I believed I could defeat him without killing him. Crack. You're strong, kid. I'll give you that. The man said as he grabbed the front of his jacket and ripped it off. My eyes grew wide when I saw that his entire body was covered in grey stone. On his shoulder, where my piercing blood attack landed, I saw a big crack stretching from his shoulder to his chest. The pale exposed skin underneath had a large bloody gash. I also noticed that everywhere else I had landed a strike, there were now small cracks on his skin. His face was composed of several large plates of stone, while a pair of white eyes stared at me in begrudging respect. But you won't beat me. This guy is like Kirishima and Tetsu. Getting past his rock-solid defense won't be easy. Using piercing blood again isn't an option either. I'm starting to feel lightheaded. I took an unconscious step back as the stone-quirked man stepped forward. Using my blood katana against him won't work then. Where the hell is Edge Shot when you need him? I think I'm doing well for little kid. You, on the other hand, haven't landed a single hit on me. I said with a confident and easygoing voice. I was doing my best to channel Gojo's confident personality so the guy wouldn't see how nervous I actually was. Kinda pathetic if you ask me. You got guts, kid. I respect that. But I'm ending this. The man rushed me and threw a series of punches my way, each of which I dodged and weaved away from, thanks to my shorter size and speed. The man may have a tough defense, but it seems to slow him down as well. I clapped my hands and landed another punch onto the man's back, causing him to stumble, but he then spun around to swing at me wildly. I jumped back to dodge the swing and shook my hand in pain. Despite having hardened my fist with my blood, it still hurt punching solid stone. Number 2. Riki. I felt water wrap around my body, covering me in a layer of defense. I pushed myself forward and slid across the rough floor as if it were made of ice. My opponent looked momentarily surprised at my boost of speed but quickly recovered. He kicked the air where he thought I was going to be but stumbled when I backflipped over his leg. He looked up just in time to receive a powerful kick that cracked the stone armor on his neck and cheek. Got you. The man with the stone defense quirk smirked as he grabbed my ankle while I was in midair. Shit. I was tugged through the air and slammed into the brick wall to our left with enough force to crack the bricks in several sections. I gasped as all the air in my lungs shot out of me from the force of the blow. The man wasn't done there. No, he pulled me out of the wall and lifted me up in the air. He pulled his other arm back and punched my stomach with bone-breaking strength. I felt myself black out for a split second as I flew back through the alley, only to crash into a stack of trash bins and boxes. If it wasn't for Riki and focusing a layer of blood around my stomach at the last second, all my organs would have been turned to mush. I tried to get back to my feet, but the sheer amount of pain I was feeling forced me to stop. I glared up at the approaching man as he walked towards me with a confident stride. Damn it! I shouldn't have hesitated and held back with my piercing blood technique. If I hadn't, I wouldn't be in this situation. Your quirk is something else. Teleporting and blood control. How impressive. It's almost as if you had two quirks. Seeing that mask, it seems like you want to be a hero. Don't you, you runt? Unfortunately, the road ends here for you. +5 SP. Shit. Despite having 3 cursed techniques, I'm still so weak. I ignored the stabbing pain in my midsection and forced myself to my feet. My cheeks suddenly swelled, and I was forced to lift my mask so I could spit out a large amount of blood. I wiped my mouth and watched as my opponent was now only 10 feet away. Sliding my mask back down, I felt my legs begin to grow weak. This is bad. I have to run. Now then, die. I looked up to see the man dash towards me with his arms held above his head, ready to smash my head into a paste. Number 4. I held my hands in front of me in a similar manner as potential man would for the divine general, but my hands were open and flat. Ryu. The stone man may not be able to see my auspicious beast, but he could immediately sense a wave of negative energy explode out from me, causing his eyes to grow wide in fear. From my hands, a wave of CE took the form of a large serpentine dragon that shot straight into my opponent's chest. Ryu opened its large jaws and clamped down straight into the man's chest, shattering his armor and cutting deep into his torso. +30 SP. This was a technique that was capable of pushing back Ryman Sukyuna in his Heian-era form. In other words, this guy was defeated in a flash. A loud explosion shot out from around me as Ryu and the now dead man crashed straight through the building beside us. Ryu kept flying even after shooting out the other side of the building and released my would-be killer in the air. Ryu vanished and returned back to me just as the man's body fell to the ground with a loud crack. Unfortunately, the man landed straight in the center of a busy road, causing a wave of panic to flood the streets. Luckily, no vehicle or person was underneath the man's heavy body when he crashed. In no time, a large crowd of people gathered around the body. Ah. Is he dead? His chest. Due to pumping almost all of my remaining CE into Ryu to ensure my victory, I began to feel extremely tired. It didn't help that my injuries caused pulses of extreme agony to echo throughout my body. But I knew I couldn't stay here. I had to leave immediately. I gazed over at my dropped marbles and cursed. No time to gather them. What a waste. Limping away, I took off my blooded mask and used the wall beside me to support my weight as I left the area. As I neared the street from which I entered the alley, I was relieved to see it sparsely occupied. Everyone was too focused on the large crater with a dead man in the center to pay any attention to an inconsequential 11-year-old. Don't pass out. Don't pass out. Don't. I had numbly walked in a single direction. It didn't matter where I went as long as I left the area of the fight. My vision was blurry, and I couldn't make out my surroundings. Sadly, after a while, my legs took me as far as they could. Like a puppet with its strings suddenly cut off, I fell to my knees and slammed face first onto what felt like grass. Shit, I'm passing out. Slowly, black began to encompass my vision, and I knew no more. General POV. Detective Tsukochi Naomasa is a tall man with short black hair and rectangular black eyes. He wears his signature tan overcoat and matching hat. Underneath, he wears a black suit, a green tie, matching slacks, and dress shoes. His expression was calm as he stepped out of his private vehicle. His gaze swept over the extensive crime scene that blocked off a large section of a once busy street located within the heart of Hamamatsu. Several uniformed police officers and their cruisers stood as a barrier to stop curious civilians from entering the area. His black eyes then zeroed in on the large crater at the center of the road. Sangza, Tsukochi said as he walked over to one of the officers standing near the crater with a small notepad. Lying still at the center was a white blanket covering a still body. What stood out the most from this officer was the large cat head on his shoulders. "What do we have?" Sangza nodded his fluffy head and flipped through several pages in his notepad. At around 7:30 to 7:46 p.m. tonight, a man by the name of Uchida Ryota, the now deceased, fell from the sky and landed in this crater with several stab wounds around his torso. The pro-hero Ed Shot was the first on the scene and is currently on a 4-block search for any potential suspects. Some witnesses say that he exploded out from that building and suddenly fell, Sangza said as he pointed at the building across the street. The building had a massive hole in its front wall on the 3rd floor. Rubble and destruction could be seen poking out from the opening. Any other casualties? How many were injured? Luckily, there were no other fatalities from the incident. However, several of the people from inside the building were injured when Uchida crashed through the building. They've been taken to Seirei Hamamatsu General Hospital. Sangza said, much to Tsukochi's relief. "Tell me more about Uchida Ryota," Tsukochi said as he and Sangza walked away from the crater and towards the damaged building. "What was his quirk? Any criminal history?" Uchida's quirk is called Stone Constitution. His entire body is covered in a layer of thick stone that gave him a layer of defense. Sangza said as he and Tsukochi now stood on the 3rd floor, the detective surveying the damage. The man also did have a record. 3 assaults in the past 2 years, and he was arrested for robbing a convenience store 4 years ago. He even assaulted several officers when they tried to arrest him. So, a repeat offender with a strong defensive quirk, Tsukochi said as he turned his head to examine where the large trail of destruction seemingly entered from. That doesn't explain how Uchida flew through this building and into the air. Does he have any ties with the Yakuza or any of the local gangs? We're currently looking deeper into his background, but so far, it doesn't seem to be gang-related. Tsukochi hummed and walked out of the building by the side door. Sangza followed behind him as they entered an alleyway full of officers and forensic investigators. There were several areas marked with tape and small yellow cones. Tsukochi took his hat off and kneeled down next to a cone. His eyes focused on the 2 objects beside the cone. Marbles. Tsukochi muttered with a raised eyebrow. Standing up, he turned to watch some of the members of the forensics team gather what seemed like blood. But from the looks of their disappointed faces, the blood might not be viable due to it mixing with the dirty alleyway water. "It looks like the fight began here and somehow ended up on the street," Sangza said as he looked over at the damaged brick walls in the alley alongside the several ruined trash bins. "A deal gone wrong." "Perhaps," Tsukochi said as he stared at the pile of ruined trash bins and boxes. Turning back, he saw the large hole in the building lined up where he stood. Whoever killed Ikeda had enough power to send him through 3 stories of solid brick and steel. Could it have been a vigilante? Sangza asked as he looked straight through the building where Ikeda had crashed through from beside Tsukochi. "That's what we're going to find out." Shimizu Sauta POV. "Hey, an unfamiliar ceiling." I blinked slowly in an attempt to remove the remnants of sleep from my eyes and turned my head to the side. That small action of mine caused a ripple of excruciating pain to shoot through my body, causing me to clench my teeth to stop the incoming yell of agony. It was then that the memories from my fight flooded the forefront of my mind, reminding me of the fact that I had killed a man with the use of Ryu. It didn't matter that I had done it in self-defense. It didn't change the fact that I had taken that man's life. I'm a murderer. Easy there, kid. You shouldn't move around too much. Despite the warning from the unknown voice, I quickly turned towards the direction the mysterious voice came from, causing another jolt of pain to course through me. Sitting in a chair several feet away was a rather well-built man with blonde hair and grey-blue eyes with no eyebrows. He seemed to be in his mid-20s or so, and he had a large scar splitting his forehead. There were visible traces of facial hair over his mouth and at the bottom of his chin. The man's attire consisted of a blue-collared shirt over white tank top and a standard pair of pants and boots. This guy seems familiar. Shit. My head's killing me. The hell are you? Where am I? What year is it? I grabbed my head to try and relieve the pain as I fired off several questions to the strange man. Seeing my clearly distressed reaction, the man stood up quickly with his hands in front of him in a disarming fashion. "Wow there, kid. Easy. I'm friendly," the blonde man said with a shaky smile. "I found you unconscious a block away. So I just, brought you to my apartment and treated your wounds. Why is he saying that like a question? Plus 20 SP. Despite the pain, I pushed myself up to sit on the small bed and looked down at my body. My entire upper body was covered in decently well-placed bandages and other first aid care. I tentatively touched my torso, where my precious organs were, and found no traces of scars. Phew, I still have my organs. That's a win in my book. The names. Jin. Like I said, you're in my apartment, and the year is 2394. Jin said with a confused look as he scratched his head. How are you feeling? I'm not the best with first aid, and I wasn't sure if calling an ambulance was the right call. I don't know your situation after all. Hold the phone. Jin. As in Booba Bagawa something. Jin. It's twice. I see. Thank you for your help, Jin. I said with a wince as a sharp pain pulsed from my stomach. Plus 25 SP. Don't worry about it. I couldn't exactly leave a kid lying in the street like that. Jin said as he walked over to his small kitchen. While he was gone, I took a quick look around. Beside me, I found my backpack that held my manuscript for my third book, Episode 1 of Star Wars. The apartment was rather run down, with stains on the walls. There was minimal furniture and personal effects throughout the small apartment. Off in the corner were several empty beer or liquor bottles gathered together. The air was rich with the aroma of cigarettes, which made my nose twitch. After a few seconds, Jin came back with a bottle of water. Thanks. I accepted the drink and took several thirsty gulps, suddenly aware of how dry my throat was. When my thirst was quenched, I looked back over to Jin and saw him look uncomfortable and unsure of where he stood. His left hand was rubbing his head fiercely. How long was I out? I think 2 days. Jin said as he retook his original seat. I nodded and rubbed my face to help calm myself. 2 days? Well, that's not good. I said as I looked down at my bed and then at the lone sheet and pillow on the ground several feet away. He gave up his bed for me. Despite knowing that Jin, or Twice, would one day be a villain and part of the League of Villains. I couldn't help but be sympathetic to him after reading the original story. While he did a lot of bad things throughout the story, Jin was by no means evil. He was a character plagued with mental illness and loneliness. He was a person who truly cared for the few friends he had, and he had proven himself to be reliable to his found family in the League of Villains. Only to one day be killed by someone he believed to be his friend. Then again, I'm not squeaky clean anymore. I did kill a man. So, in terms of heinous action so far, I'm probably worse than Jin. Unless there's something Horikoshi didn't share with the class for his backstory. For a so-called future villain, instead of walking away and leaving my unconscious body wherever he found me, he decided to help me in my moment of need. He was a real one for that. Thank you, Jin. Truly. I owe you for helping me. I softly said as I swung my legs off the bed. I ignored the pain and looked at the surprised man with a smile. You wouldn't happen to have a phone, would you? Go on, Jin. Eat. Your food will get cold. Well, alright. Plus 10 SP. I smiled at the man and grabbed another handful of noodles with my chopsticks. On Jin's head was a hood, and the medical mask he had worn earlier was in his jacket pocket. I slurped my ramen hungrily and loudly, showing my appreciation for the chef's delicious food. Jin sniffed the alluring aroma of his food and finally began to eat. Immediately, a small smile grew on his face from the taste, and he immediately dug in hungrily as well. The particular ramen stand we were at was relatively busy at this time of day. Despite the high traffic, the wait was worth it for a bowl of their delicious ramen. As one could imagine, not eating for 2 days had made me extremely hungry. So, after getting dressed in my now washed clothes, I invited Jin to join me in eating as a way of thanks for helping me. He tried to refuse initially, but I wouldn't take no for an answer. I was a persistent and persuasive guy. One look at his kitchen told me all I needed to know. The man didn't look like he'd had a decent meal in a long time, so buying him dinner was the least I could do. I did have some decent money after selling my first book. After all, you sure you don't have to hurry home? Ain't your parents worried about you? Don't get any, so it's fine. You want some gyoza? My straightforward answer stumped Jin momentarily, leaving him confused and unsure of what to say. Despite his silence, he looked at me with an expression of understanding. In the end, he just nodded, and I placed an order for some gyoza. Plus 15 SP. While I didn't worry too much about the orphanage reaction to my disappearance, I was more concerned with how the Hatsumes would react to my disappearance. My excuse for the orphanage director was that I had stayed at a friend's house and that it completely slipped my mind to tell them I would be gone for a few days. By her angry voice and overreaction, it was to say she was worried about me. How nice of her. Things got dicey when I called Minato. Safe to say, I got chewed out by the man due to leaving him in the dark for so long. I had given him the excuse that I had gotten in trouble at the orphanage, and I ended up being grounded with no phone privileges. I was lucky to have woken up when I did because Minato told me he was about to head to the orphanage, where I stayed for answers. If that had happened, things would have gotten more complicated. When Minato handed me the phone to speak to Mai, I wasn't able to give her an excuse before she called me a big idiot and hung up the phone. Her reaction caught me off guard, and I was left stumped, causing Jin to stare at me with confusion while I gazed into nothing like an idiot. You know, you didn't have to do this, Jin suddenly said as I placed some gyoza in my mouth. His face was downcast and hidden by his hood. His eyes stared deeply into his empty ramen bowl. His right hand pressed against his head, and his left foot began to tap repeatedly on the floor. I should be the one buying you food. You're a kid, after all. It's fine. Really. I waved his concerns away as I lifted my arm up to show off my now clean but lightly damaged hoodie. You gave me your bed and even washed my clothes, and you even treated my wounds. Buying some food for my new friend isn't a big deal. It's the least I can do. Sorry, wallet. You're taking one for the team. Friend. Jin whispered as he slowly turned to me, his eyes wide and unbelieving. Me. Plus 25 SP, well, yeah, I said honestly. Despite my future knowledge of the man, I wouldn't hold what he has yet to do against him. I could only judge him for what he has done. And what he had done was help me during my moment of need. Who knows what would have happened if someone else with much darker intentions found me instead? In my eyes, Twice was a bro. Unless you think being friends with an 11-year-old is weird. If you do, I don't blame you. It is odd now that I think about it. Plus 50 SP, are you sure? Jin looked at me, his eyes shaky and fearful. That you want to be friends with someone like me? Someone like you? I asked. Why not you? Because I'm. Jin whispered, each word causing his head to droop lower and lower. You're Jin, right? I interrupted, causing his head to snap back up. You're the guy who saved my bacon. That makes you a hero in my eyes. So I don't see a problem with us being friends. Do you? Plus 100 SP. Jin's eyes grew wide and wet at my words. His mouth opened and closed like a gaping fish. His mind struggled to find a response. Ultimately, he gave me a small smile and a nod, seemingly not trusting his voice. Great. Now then, how about another order of gyoza? Sounds good. Another order of gyoza for me and my friend here. Plus 200 SP. I closed the door to my small room and threw my book bag onto my small bed. I shimmied my way around my few belongings and took a seat on my chair beside my small desk. Did I tell you my room was small? Because it is. After a few years of not being adopted, the room I had shared with 3 other kids began to grow bigger and bigger as each one of them got adopted. The caretakers and director all looked at me with sympathy alongside a hint of fear. Over time, my CE began making them uncomfortable around me. I didn't blame them. I practically radiated negativity. Anyway, they had decided to move me to a private room so I could have some more privacy due to my unexpectedly extended stay at the orphanage. This pretty much meant that they didn't expect me to get adopted, and they were hiding me away in order not to scare future hopeful parents from adopting the other kids. Harsh but understandable. At least I got my own room now, even if it was the size of a utility closet. I leaned back on my old, creaky chair and winced as its wooden backrest dug into my sore back. Man, I got my ass kicked. I lifted up my shirt and peeled back some of my bandages to look at the massive purple bruise on my stomach. Yikes. When I finally got back to the orphanage, I was greeted by a furious but surprisingly concerned director. The older woman must have asked me dozens of questions until she was finally satisfied. Thankfully, my ability to create excuses was unparalleled. Unfortunately, I ended up actually being grounded for a month. I sat on my chair for several minutes, my expression pensive and frustrated as I rested my weary body. I almost died. I only managed to win by the skin of my teeth. I should be happy that I am still alive. Not many 11-year-olds could boast they managed to beat a grown-ass man. But then again, how many 11-year-olds have killed someone as well? Knowing that, why is it that I'm so disappointed in myself? After having a couple of hours to think things through from the moment I woke up today, the fact that I had killed that man in the alleyway no longer bothered me as much as before. It was either him or me. And I chose me. I couldn't let that bring me down. I wonder if there was something wrong with me in the head or if I was just mad coping. What would have happened if I was with Mai? Would I have been able to protect her? I was barely able to protect myself. I whispered and felt an unreasonable swell of anger rise in me. Despite being alive for 11 years, I've only really had 2 people I considered friends. 3 when you counted Jin. My first friend was Keiko, a sweet girl who was also orphaned alongside me during the water incident that took our parents. She now lived happily with her new family in Masutafu. I was happy for her. My second friend, the wacky but brilliant Mai. If you looked past her crazy and obsessive behavior towards her inventions, she was actually pretty funny and fun to be with, causing her to dig a place in my heart despite my initial intentions of using her like a point farm. I had tried making more friends in middle school to ease away the loneliness I felt, but having a constant flow of negative energy trickle out of me made it a challenging task. Add in my quirkless status, and my ability to make friends gets worse. So, not much luck there. So the idea of either Keiko or Mai, the very few friends I did have, getting hurt or killed because I lacked the strength to defeat anyone who wanted to hurt them caused me to grow angry. Angry at myself for being so weak. That fight was a wake-up call. I see that now. I didn't win because I was strong. I won because I got lucky. I muttered and summoned my Gacha system. The floating Gacha machine pulsed with power as the plastic prizes inside glowed with energy. Looking over to the floating screen beside the machine, I saw that I had accumulated 5,100 SP to spend. It's time I changed that. I can't let what happened 2 days ago happen again. I need strength. I need to get stronger. I have to become the strongest. An image of Gojo and Sukuna flashed in my mind. I reached over and spun the dial on the Gacha machine while using 1500 SP. I waited and listened as the prizes danced in the machine until one of them popped out of the lid. The diamond tier reward pull only had a 35% chance of pulling a reward befitting the point cost, meaning my chances of getting a legendary reward were low. However, the prize's bright blue glow erased any doubts of this one being a dud. Grabbing the prize ball, I snapped open the lid and grinned. You have pulled Jogo's cursed technique. Disaster Flames. Rank, Diamond. I don't know about this one, Mai. It's fine. It's fine. You're built different. I'm sure you can handle the knockback. You said there wasn't going to be any knockback. You must have misheard me. Plus 5 SP. I squinted my eyes at Mai as she finished adjusting the pair of mechanical arms on my body. I grunted as she tightened one of the straps extremely tightly around my bicep with a sweet smile on her face. That sorta hurts. Ah, does it? I'm sure it's fine. Plus 5 SP. Ever since I came back to work after my month-long grounding, Mai has been acting weirder than usual. By weirder, I meant she's been treating me much more roughly than before. This made sense. She wasn't very subtle about hiding the fact that she was mad at me for up and leaving her alone for weeks. I had underestimated how much she had grown to care about me, which was odd in itself, knowing her character. Then again, I had given up on expecting the world around me to stay the same as in the anime manga. The people around me were very real with human emotions. Not characters behind a screen or in ink on paper. When I entered the shop on my first day back, Mai looked extremely happy for a split second before her happiness melted into a blank smile. Her eyes looked at me with a silent message of future retribution. But when it came to that meant I would end up being her guinea pig for the several babies she had made in my absence. All Minato said to me was, "Good luck," and left the storefront. What a traitor. So, for the next 2 weeks, I've been subjected to testing baby after baby in the hopes of getting her to forgive me eventually. Sure, her anger was a bit nonsensical, but she was 10. So, she got a pass. Alright, remember to undo the safety mechanism. We don't want a repeat of yesterday. Mai said as she took several steps back and stood behind an old rusty car for cover. We were outside behind the shop, where Minato stored a lot of his junk and large mechanical parts that took up too much space inside. There were also some cars lined up outside that he worked on in his free time. The car Mai was using as a shield was an old 2015 Toyota that Minato gave her to use as she wanted. I rolled my eyes and did as she said. I grabbed the small switch on the top of the left forearm armor and gave it a spin, turning off the safety. I moved my arms up, down, left, and right to test their mobility. They were a bit hard to move, and the arms locked at times, but it was much better than the MK3 from a few days ago. So that was a win. Alright, let's see what these can do, I whispered and stepped closer to a large boxing bag made out of steel, courtesy of Minato. I slid into a loose stance and leveled my gaze on the steel bag. I heard the inner mechanisms in the arms whirl and waited. Beep. Wham. A small dent appeared on the steel bag from my right punch. I slid back and swiveled to land a left hook punch onto the bag's side, leaving a more significant dent than before. I paused and looked down at the knuckles of the arm's fists and saw several cracks and indents from my strikes. Okay, that's it. Any more than that, and they'll break, Mai. I said as I looked back to see Mai run out from behind her cover, a large grin on her face. +8 SP. Amazing. Amazing. Mai swept her hands on the steel bag to feel the dents that I caused. Well, her mechanical arms caused it. What an improvement. She then turned to me and grabbed the sides of my arms to inspect the damage. I see. It seems the shock absorption for the arms need work. How do you feel? My hands feel a bit stiff, but they're not in any pain, I said as I flipped on the safety switch in order for Mai to start removing the arms. However, the elbows were locking up between strikes. Unfortunately, this is as fast as I can make them right now, Mai said as she entirely removed the right mechanical arm and placed it on a nearby table before moving to the left. At least, if we want to avoid breaking your bones, I can improve the inner power regulators to circumvent the time to charge between strikes. Ah, yes. Please do that. I like my bones not broken. Yes. I'll be sure to keep that in mind. Mai smiled as she placed the fully removed left mechanical arm on the work table. She then grabbed my hands in hers while her thumbs swept over my red knuckles. The crosshairs in her yellow eyes grew slightly as she took a close look at my skin. They're a little swollen. Are you sure you're not in any pain? Yeah, they're fine. Just be sure to increase the padding inside the gloves, I said as she let me go in favor of writing down several notes on her clipboard. Will do. +10 SP. I smiled at her as she continued writing and drawing all her ideas. It was pretty fascinating watching her work. It's still hard to believe she's capable of such amazing inventions at such an early age. I turned my head to the steel boxing bag to look at the small dents the mechanical arms created. Then again, she will eventually create support gear advanced enough to handle my Doria using 10 to 20% of one for all after all. No, stuff like these power arms is just the start. You're amazing, Mai, I said without looking at her. She paused in her writing and rambling to look at me in confusion. These arms of yours are just the beginning. I know one day, your babies will change the world. I'm sure of it. +15 SP. Of course they will. Way to state the obvious, Sauter. Just you wait. My name will be known throughout the world. Mai said with a large, proud smile on her face as she puffed her chest out. +30 SP. I chuckled at her egotistical attitude but didn't disagree. Having an unorthodox mindset and a strong sense of self will only serve to push her to new limits. A fact that pushed jujitsu sorcerers like Gojo and Sukuna to the very peaks of the jujitsu world. I have to be like Mai. I have to push myself if I want to be among the strongest in this world. That fight from a month ago has shown me I can't keep living my life like I did before. If I do, I'll get killed by the likes of Shigaraki, All for One, Overhaul, the Nomu, and so many other strong people. I looked down at my hand and clenched it into a tight fist. I have to become stronger. For that, I need more fighting experience to improve my understanding of Jujutsu. I can't rely on the inherent knowledge of how to use my cursed techniques. Knowledge isn't mastery. I need to push beyond and reach the heights of Gojo or Sukuna. No. I have to surpass them. And with the power of this gacha system, I can reach levels far beyond and lap them. Suddenly, a stray drop of water fell on my clenched fist. I blinked and looked up at the sky to see dark grey clouds and rumbling. Mai looked up as well and quickly scrambled to grab her mechanical arms. Ah. It's going to rain. Baby number 12 isn't waterproof. Sauter, help. 3 months later. The rainy city at night was a spectacle of glistening streets and shimmering reflections. The glow of streetlights created a soft ambience, casting a warm halo around the rain-soaked pavement. The sounds of raindrops tapping against the roofs around me and splashing onto the ground fill the air, creating a soothing symphony. The city lights dance in the puddles, creating a mesmerizing mosaic of colors. The reflections of neon signs and traffic lights add an otherworldly quality to the urban landscape, turning the city into a dreamlike, ethereal place. Despite the wet sidewalks and misty air, there's a certain beauty and tranquility that comes with a rainy night in the city. But what stood out the most to those paying attention to the rooftops of the surrounding buildings were the dozens of perched crows looking down at the streets. They watched the passing citizens with an eerie, razor-sharp focus. I looked out at the city of Hamamatsu with a steady gaze. A black hood sat over my head to shield me from the non-stop rain as I kneeled on the edge of one of the roofs near the financial center in the city. Underneath my black jacket was a long-sleeved white shirt with a high collar. Below my waist were black jeans and sneakers, while a sheathed katana sat on my left hip. Sitting inside a black Kevlar sheath strapped to my back was a short but wide-edged combat knife with a black fur guard. I pulled out Slaughter Demon from its sheath and held it out for the black crow who was standing on my shoulder. Its head twitched as if to nod to my silent command, and it grabbed the blade between its feet. Once it secured it, the crow jumped and flew away. Nodding, I stood up and used my CE to help me jump from rooftop to rooftop toward my new destination. After traveling for a few city blocks, I stopped at the edge of a rooftop belonging to an old warehouse. My attention focused on the scene below. "Where are you heading?" A voice said with amusement, cutting the putter-patter of the rain. "Come on, sugar, we just want to chat." Leave me alone." A feminine voice yelled. Down below on the dark city streets, a woman dressed in an attire fit for a hostess speedwalked across the dimly lit back streets. Her dark brown hair was wet, and so were her slightly revealing clothes, causing them to cling to her curvy body. Following behind the clearly fearful woman was a small group of men. They walked after her with amused smiles on their faces as they ignored the pouring rain that drenched them. 2 out of the 5 men had mutant features due to their quirks. One of the mutated men had 4 arms and red skin, while the other man had a large head and small limbs with yellow skin. The other 3 men all had normal features, their quirks most likely being the emitter type. I watched the woman from the rooftops as she continued to try to escape her pursuers and make her way in and out of several streets. But no matter what she did, the group of men continued following behind her. This went on a while longer before the woman came to an unexpected dead end at the end of a long, dirty alleyway, her face lighting up with fear and dread. "Oh no," the woman said, quickly spinning around to try and leave, but she was soon halted by her pursuers, who were creating a wall with their bodies. "Go away. Oh, or I'll call the police." "Please, you probably don't have a phone. If you did, then you would have already called them." One of the men said he had dirty blonde hair and green eyes. "You ain't calling no one, sugar." Then I'll scream." "I wouldn't." The last ghoul that did that got her tongue ripped out. The man with red skin and 4 arms said with a grin, causing the woman's face to pale. "Yeah, so shut your mouth." The man with a large head and yellow skin shouted. This caused the last 2 plain-looking members of their group to chuckle. "Ayo, boss man. Ain't she a looker?" one of the plain men said. His tongue slowly glided along his lips. Much prettier than the one from last night. His comment caused the woman to begin shaking in fear, her legs slowly walking back until her back hit the cold brick wall. Her arms slowly rose up to wrap around herself. 5 on 1. I like those odds. I muttered. I used CE to strengthen my legs and jumped off the roof I stood on and fell. A surprisingly soft crash rocked the wet floor as I made landfall onto a puddle between the men and the woman, sending water everywhere. I rose to my feet and slid my hands into my jacket pocket. Several moments of silence hung in the air as I coolly stared at them from the darkness of my hood. Who's the shrimp? Just for that, I'm kicking your ass first. I pointed my finger at the man with 4 arms and red skin. 5 times 6 is equal to plus 30 SP. 4 arms looked dumbfounded for several seconds before he began to laugh his head off. His 4 cronies soon joined in on the laugh as they all looked at me with amusement. Blood manipulation. It's just some kid playing hero. Listen here, kid. Get out of here before we dash flowing red scale. Before anyone could react, I dashed straight at the 4-armed man and sent my blood-covered fist straight into his stomach, causing the man to fold over in pain, his face twisted in agony. The man's entourage all looked so shocked at my sudden burst of speed and power that they remained frozen. The woman behind me stared at my back with wide eyes, clearly surprised at my show of power despite my size. I leaned in close to the red-skinned man's right ear, a mask made of cracked blood now over my eyes, and whispered, I told you, didn't I? You're going down first. Plus 5 SP, blood manipulation, flowing red scale. It is a technique that increases the user's body temperature, pulse rate, and the number of red blood cells. This results in a significant boost in energy and physical abilities, allowing the user to perform superhuman feats such as increased strength, speed, and agility. The enhanced strength and speed granted by flowing red scale can be used to boost the user's capabilities in hand-to-hand combat, making a knowledgeable fighter a force to be reckoned with. Jumping to the side, I was able to dodge the red-skinned man's pair of well-muscled arms with ease. He growled in anger and swung at me again, but once again hit nothing but air as I took a back step. His eyes twitched at the fact he was too slow and uncoordinated to hit me. His red skin glistened in the dim light, a stark contrast to his black, tattered clothes. Plus 8 SP. Grr. Help me, you idiots. The 4-armed man roared to his crew, jolting them all to action. All right. We got your back, boss. TCH. This ain't no kid. He's too fast and strong. I rolled my eyes from under the darkness of my hood and raised my arms in front of me in a loose boxer stance. The 4-armed man held his stomach and took a back seat to watch 3 of his crew dash towards me with the large-headed man hanging back. He looked down at his stomach and saw a dark red bloody spot that slowly disappeared, causing him great confusion. You'll regret this, you bastard. One of the plain-looking men pulled his arm back and threw a sloppy punch at my head. His teeth are all different colors. I observed and parried his punch to the side, causing the man to trip. I jumped up and crashed my elbow into the side of his head, sending him to the ground, unconscious. Hey, now they're all yellow. His emotions must be why his teeth change colors. What a dumb quirk. Plus 8 SP. Plus 8 SP, Nishi. Plain Man number 2 yelled as he and Plain Man number 3 looked down at their friend. The 2 of them then charged at me, their faces twisted into rage. You'll pay for that. Despite their larger size and numbers, I was able to move in and out from their strikes and kicks with ease. These 2 men were untrained and relied heavily on their numbers to overpower me. Someone with decent training could keep up with them thanks to how they telegraphed each swing or blow. The man to my left seemed to have a quirk that gave him super long fingernails on command, and the one on my right seemingly had a quirk that gave him extra joints in his skeleton. Their pathetic quirks didn't even offer them any buffs or attack power. Unfortunately, they were up against someone amped up with flowing red scale and with Itadori Yuji's hand-to-hand combat skills. Mr. Left-Right Goodnight himself. Blam. Crack. Plus 10 SP, plus 10 SP. The 2 men fell onto the ground like bags of bricks from my swift, well-placed punches and kicks to their heads. I looked at my 3 knocked-out opponents with disappointment. You done hiding behind your lackeys? I said towards the 4-armed man. The one with the large head and yellow skin shook in annoyance from where he stood. How pathetic. +5 SP. Take this. Wave of might. The man with the large head sent out his right hand towards me. His hand was covered in a golden hue of energy, and his palm was pointed in my direction. In the blink of an eye, a large concentrated burst of energy flew straight at me, causing my eyes to grow wide. Shit. No time to dodge. I raised my arms in front of me and concentrated my CE throughout my body to reinforce myself. The energy burst slammed into my body and sent me skidding back several feet. I dug my feet into the ground and immediately began to slow down. I slid to a stop beside the woman at the end of the dead end. She looked at me with worry and slight trepidation as I dropped my arms beside me. I ignored her in favor of analyzing the large-headed man's quirk. Before he unleashed that attack, he was holding his arm behind his back to hide what he was doing. In fact, he was doing that during my fight with the three bozos. That means his attack needs to be charged before he can use it. Therefore are you okay? Be silent. Silence you, wench. I'm thinking. +5 SP. The curvy woman flinched at my quick and rude comment. I paid her no mind and stepped forward to begin walking toward my last two opponents, causing the nervous, yellow-skinned man to flinch. It seemed that he didn't expect me to be able to tank his attack. Immediately, he pulled his arm behind himself to charge up another attack. As if I'd let you. What do you think this is? Dragon Ball? I exploded towards the large-headed man, causing him to flinch and break his concentration momentarily. Just as I was about to reach the bobblehead, Four Arms decided it was time to get back into the fight. Four Arms grunted and used both of his right arms in an attempt to punch my head through the wall behind me, only to miss as I weaved under his attack. Using a quick back step, I created some space between me and the large mutant. He then stepped in front of his large-headed companion and shifted into a Muay Thai stance. Damn you. Just who are you? Four Arms growled out. Instead of answering, I rushed to the red-skinned man and delivered a right C-enhanced punch that he quickly blocked. I tilted my head to the side and felt the wind from his left jab slice next to my ear. Using my short height, I stepped into his personal space and landed a hook punch into my opponent's liver. Four Arms clenched his teeth in pain and was about to smash his upper arms onto my head when an invisible force crashed into his liver again, knocking him off balance. Divergent fist, I muttered as I dashed after Four Arms. Leaping into the air, I landed 3 snap kicks onto my opponent's head, chest, and stomach. Thanks to my divergent fist, each attack had a delayed second impact. Four Arms violently spun in the air from my attack and fell in a puddle below. As his body slammed on the floor, a large, victorious grin grew on his face. I felt the hair on my body stand up, and I quickly looked over at Mr. Bobblehead. Wave of might. Shit. So much for sticking only to blood manipulation. Just as the wave of yellow energy was about to slam into me, I held my palm towards the ground and shot out a concentrated burst of flames that illuminated everything in the dead end. I felt my body violently jerk upwards as I moved out of the way of Mr. Bobblehead's attack. Fire. Mr. Bobblehead screeched as he saw his attack miss. +8 SP. I landed on the ground with ease and looked over to see Four Arms now on his feet. A look of apprehension and nervousness was on his face. Behind him, Mr. Bobblehead was shaking like a leaf. Those flames. Aren't they like endeavors? Mr. Bobblehead muttered, his face covered in rain and sweat. Four Arms growled and began running full speed toward me. Don't be ridiculous. This punk just has a fire quirk. Hurry up and recharge. I don't think so. I held up my hands and swiped them to the side. Four Arms suddenly jerked to the side and flew straight into Mr. Bobblehead. The two men rolled on the ground in a heap of flailing limbs. My body. Four Arms muttered as he trembled. It hurts. Taijima-san. What's the matter? Mr. Bobblehead asked Four Arms, Taijima, as he watched the four-armed man shake uncontrollably on the ground. Blood began to spill out of Taijima's mouth and eyes as he convulsed on the ground. Much prettier than the one from last night, I said as I continued pointing my hand at Taijima, repeating what one of the plane men said earlier. That's what your buddy said, right? Slowly, I clenched my hand tighter and tighter, but not to the point of closing my fingers into a fist. My action caused Taijima to hold his stomach tightly as he screamed bloody murder. You see, I don't particularly like people like you guys. Rapists and the like. So, I'll do the world a favor and just get rid of you 5K. For a moment, I hesitated in what I was about to do next. I looked behind me at the frightened woman and imagined what could have happened to her if I hadn't decided to go on my crusade to get stronger. She could have been raped, beaten, or even killed by these rabid dogs. I took a deep breath and steeled my resolve. At the same time, unknown to me, a piece of my humanity shriveled within me. Blood manipulation. Human pincushion. Human pincushion was the first original technique I created with my blood manipulation curse technique. It requires me to inject my own blood into my opponent's bloodstream, imbued with a layer of CE. The layer of CE protects my blood from being diluted or absorbed into my opponent's body, meaning that it will lie in wait until I reach out to it and command it to do whatever I wish, whether that be to restrict their movements or to shred their insides into pieces. To finish off the technique, I command my blood to exponentially expand like a short-range explosion similar to a grenade, sending long spikes of blood throughout my target's body. Once I called out the name of my first original technique, I made a fist, and spikes of my blood shot out of Taijima's body, causing him to look like a bloody pincushion. His face was twisted in agony until it finally relaxed. Blood slowly leaked out of his body, mixing in with a large puddle of dirty water underneath him. Plus 30 SP, plus 15 SP, plus 12 SP, arg. Why, you killed him. Mr. Bobblehead yelled as he quickly stood up and began to run away. Leave me alone. As he ran, he saw a lone crow at the end of the long alleyway. But what confused him the most was the combat knife underneath its tiny legs. The small bird cawed and swiftly flew away. Funny. That's what she said, too. I said as I motioned to the woman behind me, who was now on the ground on her knees. Her face was etched into shock and horror at my actions. Plus 8 SP. I ignored the woman and raised my hands. Clap. I suddenly appeared where the dropped combat knife once sat, causing Mr. Bobblehead's eyes to grow wide and his mouth to open in horror. I held my right fist in my left hand as I charged up my CE. Due to his body shape and head size, Mr. Bobblehead was unable to slow his speed and stop his run, causing him to trip right in front of me. Wham! My punch struck true as it broke Mr. Bobblehead's nose and sent him crashing back a dozen feet. His broken nose sprayed blood all along the dirty, wet ground. Once he rolled to a stop, his body twitched a few times until it stilled into unconsciousness. Plus 15 SP. Damn it. I looked down at my blooded and bruised right fist with a frown. I thought I would have gotten it that time for sure. I have been trying to achieve a black flash for the past 2 months, and so far, I've failed at achieving a single one. I needed to reach the sparks of black in order to further push my understanding of the essence of cursed energy. But so far, no luck. I sighed in frustration and walked down the alleyway. As I did, I passed by the 4 knocked out men and 1 corpse. Reaching my newly acquired weapon, Slaughter Demon, I bent down and slid it back into its holster. Standing up, I noticed the woman I inadvertently saved stare at me with a dumb expression. Why are you still here? I asked the frozen woman. My voice snapped her out of her daze, causing her head to spin to me with fear. Get the hell out of here already. Plus 5 SP. I don't. The woman said shakily before standing to her feet. At first, she took a few small, unsure steps, her eyes scanning all the downed men and dead bodies before turning to me. She looked scared but somehow relieved at the same time. Without saying another word, she ran out of the alley and disappeared around the corner. I looked up towards the rooftops where 3 crows were perched. Their eyes were looking down at me with loyalty. Follow her. Make sure she gets home. I called out, causing one of the crows to caw. Ghetto. Will make sure that human reaches her nest. I nodded at the crow I named Ghetto as he flapped his wings and flew away. I scratched the back of my head as I still couldn't get over the fact that I was now able to understand what the crows under my command said. It was an odd experience. Being able to speak to my crows wasn't something I thought my recently pulled cursed technique, Blackbird Manipulation, could also do. Don't even ask me how they got their namesake personalities. Was Mai able to understand her birds as well? If so, that's a fact Gidge hid from us all. How dare he? Standing around here has gotten boring, so I'll come along. Maybe I'll even fly into a hawk to fight? Heh, it won't even be a fight. I'll take it down quickly. I am the strongest, after all. Crow Gojo said as he followed behind Crow Ghetto. The crow beside Crow Gojo, Crow Shoko, shook her head before looking down at me from her perch. Ha! I'll make sure they don't get distracted, master. Right, you do that. Crow Shoko nodded her little head and flew off. I watched them all fly away and turned to the unconscious men on the floor. With a heavy heart, I raised my hand up and summoned a fireball. Let's clean up this mess. Jumping from rooftop to rooftop in the dead of night like a parkouring ninja was pretty fun. Due to the size of the country, almost all of the living complexes, like apartments or houses, had to be built pretty close to one another in order to save space. This also applied to the metropolitan areas in the cities, where all the buildings and skyscrapers were practically stuck to one another to save space. Yeah, there were some areas in the country where there were more spaced out buildings, like those made for the government or private organizations, but those weren't that common to run into. Due to that, traveling from rooftop to rooftop on foot was pretty easy since you don't have to leap across large distances to get to the other side, making traveling from ward to ward all the more easy. Should start heading home now. I leaped in the air using my CE and felt the cool night air brush past my face. It felt nice and refreshing. 3 months. It's been 3 months since I embarked on my quest to master Jujutsu. This journey has led me to engage in nightly skirmishes with the less savory elements of our heroic society. The city is teeming with criminals and scoundrels, outnumbering the heroes 3 to 1. Now, some of you might be wondering why an 11, now 12-year-old, kid would go around getting into fights with grown-ass adults. The answer is simple: for experience. My path to mastering Jujutsu sorcery and my curse techniques is not an easy one. I've meticulously planned my physical training, ensuring that my new, more strenuous routine doesn't impede my growth. Rushing would be counterproductive. It wouldn't do me any good to hinder my development just to get a teeny bit stronger than before. I still had time, so there was no need to rush. I didn't want to risk being short after all. Anyways, back to what I was talking about. My reasoning as to why I was getting into fights was to increase my fighting experience and my understanding of Jujutsu sorcery. My goal was to get to the point of understanding Jujutsu like Sukuna himself while having the battle IQ of Gojo himself. My goals may seem lofty, even unattainable, to most canon Jujutsu sorcerers. But I'm not most sorcerers. I'm different. I was him. I was that guy. Or at least, I would be soon. I blinked out of my thoughts and landed in an abandoned alleyway a block or two from my orphanage in order to change. I stuffed my Jujutsu uniform away and put on a black hoodie and blue jeans. Now changed, I walked out onto the sidewalk and began walking home. Yep, just a 12-year-old walking alone at 2 a.m. Now then, where was I? I had a cheat, or as some would call it, a golden finger, that could give me every known cursed technique in the original series without the blowback, making my potential even more significant than that of Potential Man himself. It wouldn't be far-fetched to say that I could one day become an untouchable god. Just imagine the sheer power of someone with the 6 eyes, Sukuna's cursed energy reserves, Limitless, the 10 shadows, Shrine, and Star Rage could do. It was both frightening and exciting to think about. Some of you may have noticed I only listed 4 techniques. There's a reason for that. Unfortunately, I made a disappointing discovery when I unlocked my 5th cursed technique. I was only able to use 4 techniques within 2 hours of each other. Let's explain this in video game terms. Let's say my body has 4 magic slots into which I could assign a single curse technique. If I wanted to change one of the techniques, I had to wait 2 hours for one of the slots to cool down in order to switch that technique to a different one. Out of curiosity, I pushed myself to use 5 techniques at once, but I didn't like having blood flow out of my eyes, nose, ears, and mouth while the most horrible headache tried to melt my brain. Safe to say, I'm sticking to 4 curse techniques until I can safely handle more. Despite that slight hiccup, it wouldn't do me any good imagining what I could one day be able to do until I actually pulled those techniques and passives from the Gacha system. So far, I've yet to pull any of the aforementioned techniques, but I have managed to pull some other great techniques so far. I now had Jogo's fire manipulation, Yorozu's construction, Maimai's blackbird manipulation, and finally, Goda Toshio's cloning. Who was Goda Toshio? That was the name for Mr. Bagman from the hidden inventory arc in JJK. I do want to dispel one thing right now. Jogo's fire manipulation and Yorozu's construction did not make me OP. At least, not yet. No, Jogo was said to be on par with around 8 or 9 of Sukuna's fingers, making him an incredibly powerful curse spirit. Heck, his fight with Sukuna himself at Shibuya was the perfect example of what one with such a technique could do. However, Jogo was a special grade cursed spirit with a lot of cursed energy. I, on the other hand, have the reserves of a grade 1 sorcerer, which means I had no hopes of pulling off any crazy and over-the-top moves that could melt an entire city block. Moving on to Yorozu's construction technique. It was by far one of the most impressive and diverse techniques in the catalogue of curse techniques. The technique itself allows me to recreate any substance I recognize with CE, with the exception of special cursed tools. In other words, I could bring to life anything I could imagine. The sheer limitless number of possibilities was enough to cause me to laugh like a madman, which I did when I initially pulled the technique from a diamond pool, which happened to be at school. I was looked at as if I were a crazy person for an entire week after that. The technique had one restriction, which was that it did not recreate special cursed tools. That aspect of the technique was a little disappointing. My plans of creating a small armory of my 2 tools went out the window. Said 2 tools were Kusakabe's katana and Slaughter Demon. 2 weapons that went well with Moki's weapon mastery skill, which I pulled a while ago as well. Back to the technique. Creating something from nothing uses a lot of cursed energy, making this technique extremely energy inefficient compared to other cursed techniques. However, due to my relatively okay reserves and low understanding of Jujutsu, the most I could create before exhausting myself for an entire day were small medium items. This was rather sad and disappointing. Not being able to become a heavy hitter immediately was annoying, but there was nothing I could do. I had to keep training to be able to one day use these techniques to their maximum potential. This brings us back to my last 2 techniques: Blackbird manipulation and cloning. As the name suggests, Blackbird manipulation allows the user to imbue crows with CE and control them at will. The user can manipulate multiple crows at the same time from an extended range away from themselves. Additionally, the user can also share vision with the birds, making the technique perfect for surveillance. It also makes the crows, under the user's command, absolutely obedient, so they can also be used offensively, even at the cost of the bird's own life. That move was something I didn't find myself ever using unless it was life or death. This was primarily due to the mistake I made when I began naming my crows after several JJK characters and the bonus ability to understand what they were saying. It would be cruel and heartless of me to use them like Maimai did as suicide bombers. I used this particular technique to scour the city to find any seedy locations crawling with people to beat up, criminals to stop. It also helped me avoid any patrolling heroes and police as well. A convenient technique indeed. I arrived outside of the orphanage's west building and began sneakily making my way over to the window of the storage room. My room was located using precise movements and stealth. As I sneaked around, I thought of my last acquired technique: Bagman's cloning. This technique allows the user to clone themselves using a kind of mud-like liquid material manipulated with their CE. The user can produce up to 4 clones for a total of 5 bodies. Using the cloned bodies, the user can instantly change out their real one with a clone at any time. Sorta like Boogie Woogie but without the clapping. Every clone can be considered exactly identical to the original caster, with the exception of the clones knowing they're clones. Which was a relief when I found out that little tidbit. I didn't want a twice situation to happen. I haven't had many opportunities to use this ability in combat as of yet. If anything, I wanted to save this technique as my trump card for a rainy day. You never know when you might need a get-out-of-jail-free card. So, instead of using it on the field, I decided to use my clones for a more productive and lucrative reason. Page 7 is done. I'm ready to ink the next one. Got it. Got it. Here's page 8 and 9. Dude, there's a typo in chapter 21. Oh yeah? Then fix it. I used them to write up my books and manga. Stepping into my room, I closed the door behind me and congratulated myself on another successful infiltration. The sight of 4 other perfect copies of myself greeted me as they all were hard at work on their assignments. Seeing my arrival, they all paused and turned to me. "Ah, the boss is back." "Welcome back, boss." "Oi, you got some blood on your shoe. You smell like failure. No black flash tonight either." I could do without the personalities these guys have. I rolled my eyes at their comments and threw myself on my small bed. They didn't mind my dismissal and got back to work. Each of my copies was wearing different colored shirts to separate themselves better as they all slaved away. 2 of my copies were typing away on books 2 and 3 of the Hunger Games on their new laptops, while the other 2 were drawing up a storm for next week's chapter of my new serialized manga. What was so great about these clones, besides their snarky comments and the fact that my small room was now even smaller thanks to their bodies and all the art supplies and notebooks, was the fact that they didn't get tired or have any human needs. This technique really came in handy, considering I still needed to make money while training myself to become the strongest, which means that I could have them work on all my current and future books and manga series without stopping. A perfect and productive child sweatshop. "Oi, boss. Our editor called while you were gone." Clone Green said as he stopped drawing. Clone Yellow nodded and inked away at the page in front of him. I turned to CG with tired eyes and nodded, causing him to continue. "She says she wants to meet you and that she won't take no for an answer again." TCH. That woman sure is persistent. I muttered as I rubbed my face. Fine. I'll call her tomorrow to set up a meeting. As long as I can get her off my back. One meeting shouldn't hurt. CG nodded and picked up his pencil to continue sketching away. I sighed and looked up at the roof. The exhaustion from today's shenanigans and training is catching up to me. Slowly, my eyelids began to grow heavier and heavier before sleep consumed me. "Oi, boss. Brush your teeth." Info sheet Shimizu Sauta Cursed Techniques, Boogie Woogie, Todo AoE Blood Manipulation, Choso Auspicious Beast Summons, Aino Takuma Fire Manipulation, Jogo Construction, Yorozu Blackbird Manipulation, My Cloning, Bagman Skills, Yuji's Hand-to-Hand Combat Skills Yuta Swordsmanship Skills Moki's Weapons Specialist Skills Abilities Passives, Nanami's CE Reserves. Weapons, Kujisaki Nobora's Hammer Slaughter Demon Kusakabe Atsuya's Katana No way, man. I can't believe it ended in such a cliffhanger. A young middle schooler with 4 eyes and large ears said with an excited smile as he closed this week's edition of Jump. "I know, right? Now we have to wait another week to see if Raphael can survive his fight against Karari." A blue-skinned boy with fish scales all over his body said with frustration. In his hands was another copy of the newest Jump. "Hey, at least we can read Gij-sensei's other works while we wait. What chapter are you on anyway?" "I'm on chapter 18. Let me tell you, man, things are getting intense." The boy with the fish scales said as he pulled out a copy of the Hunger Games. Hee, my reach has grown to even here. I grinned as my classmates continued talking about my book from my spot at the back of the class. It was currently lunchtime, and everyone was separated into their own little groups, enjoying their food together. I, however, sat alone. Just me and my small boxed lunch comprising rice, grilled fish, vegetables, and some miso soup. All I needed was my lunch for the company. Who needed friends while you had some delicious miso soup? Not me, that's who. As I ate, I looked over to the table where the chattering students talked and saw an image of 4 turtle brothers on the main cover alongside the rest of the included story's main characters. It shouldn't be hard to guess what famous story I brought to life in the form of a shonen manga. It was none other than the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm in a world where stories like Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, and several other famous works don't exist. But I chose to start with the tale of the 4 turtle brothers, not because it was easy, but because I wanted to establish my first initial loyal fan base. You see, there is very little mutant-type representation in media. Well, unless you count Godzilla. I mean, Godzilla. But his Godzilla. And this meant that those with quirks that transformed their bodies beyond their control had very few stories that showed them off in a heroic light. Whenever they did show up, they were often shown off as the enemy or major villains. But imagine their shock when a new story of 4 mutant brothers fighting for justice as heroes came out of nowhere to rock the manga world. It was no surprise that my manga was an overnight success with around 40% of the population. People couldn't get enough of my story, and the sheer internet buzz was explosive. There were theories, fan art, and even some fan fiction as well. The sheer number of sales from my first volume caused my bank account to swell up. Add up the great numbers The Hunger Games is making in sales worldwide, and things are looking very promising for my future. Still, Tiji did have a rocky start that had me and my publisher sweating for a while. The book didn't sell so well at first, but once I released my TMNT manga a week after the book's release, and my fans couldn't help but buy the book as well due to wanting to see what other stories Gij-sensei could tell, thus boosting the book's sales numbers. The book had gotten so popular that it even made it on the New York Times bestseller list. Slowly but surely, I was building myself up as quite the prospective new author. I couldn't wait until I released Harry Potter and Star Wars in a few months. This world wasn't ready for 2 of the greatest works of fiction to hit them. Look at him. He has that creepy smile again. He's not gonna laugh like that other time again, is he? So creepy. Any happiness I felt immediately left me as 2 whispering girls looked at me with disgust from where they sat today. I frowned and flipped them off, causing them to blush in indignation. They gave me a glare and turned away with a huff. +5 SP, +5 SP. I wolfed down the rest of my lunch and placed my bento box away. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling with boredom. Man, I hate school. Nah, man, stop spamming. Get good, you pleb. +5 SP. I glared at the mask-wearing Jin, or Twice, as I mashed the square button on my controller. No matter how many complex or diverse combos I had Ryu do, Jin was somehow able to get his character, Akuma, to dodge and avoid all my attacks. Ha ha. You were but a fool to think you could challenge me. He just needs some training. He'll get it. Twice said as he changed personalities mid-fight, all the while knocking my health back with ease. Shut it, you Deadpool wannabe. I'll kick your ass today. The 2 of us were currently sitting on a couch in Jin's much cleaner and organized apartment. A pair of the controllers sat in our hands as we played the latest iteration of Street Fighter on my futuristic PlayStation 16. This was a reoccurring activity the 2 of us did twice a week when we had some time off. Me from school, work, and jujitsu stuff, and Jin from his crime shenanigans, which mostly involved him working as a henchman for a local gang. But don't worry, he's not a bad guy. He's just trying to make ends meet. Sometimes, we watched some movies or even walked around the city to mess with innocent civilians by playing harmless pranks on them. Like the time we put a fake spider in a guy's coffee, and he screamed like a little girl. Or when we pretended to be lost tourists and asked for directions to a place that didn't exist. We even grabbed some street food here and there and discussed the meaning of life when we saw a squirrel dry humping another squirrel. It was a refreshing and pleasant experience for me to have a friend I could be myself with, thanks to his older age, considering I was in my early 20s when I died. So, having a brother I could make crude jokes with was great. It took a while for Jin to be comfortable enough with me in order for him to wear his mask in my presence, but when I proved to him that his different personalities didn't change my opinion of him, he became more open and relaxed. So whenever the 2 of us hung out at his place, he wore his mask almost all the time. And let me tell you, talking to Twice was funny as shit. Eat shit. Scrub. Good game, my friend. Twice held out a hand for me to shake while his other hand made crybaby motions. I rolled my eyes and slapped his hand away, causing him to hold it against his chest with a pained expression. Violence is never the answer. No, it's the solution. Amen to that. Don't agree with him. Yes, agree to my ways. +10 SP, Gar, it's a villain. Watch out. I landed on my perch on the edge of the rooftop and looked down below at the chaotic street to find a large man covered in jagged rocks. Despite this being a relatively busy street, this guy decided it was a good idea to start raining punches into the street, causing everyone close by to panic and run away in fear. Who knew things in Narahata were as hectic as they said? Well, this is weird, I muttered as I watched the seemingly out-of-control man destroy the sidewalk, causing a cloud of dust to rise all around him. What's up with this guy? He trip or something? I then looked down the road to see someone dressed in an All Might hoodie with motorcycle protective gear. What is this? Clown hour. I'm the man who charges into danger. The crawler. The weirdo, the crawler, said as he slid along the ground on all four limbs. His head perked up at the sight of the rampaging nutcase, and he quickly came to a stop. Wait, really? Isn't this guy? Landing on a traffic light several feet behind the crawler was a girl maybe 3 or 4 years older than me, dressed in a skin-tight black outfit with small bat wings on the small side of her back. She had pink hair pulled up in twin tails as a black painted-on mask sat over her eyes. Hey, another one? Are these two new heroes or something? I looked down at the crow beside me and squinted at him. Oi, Crow Nan Amy. Didn't I tell you to look for crooks in isolated locations? This is too public. I originally found the large human rock a few blocks away in an isolated area. It seems he decided to move here for some reason. Crow Nan Amy said as he tilted the small round sunglasses over his small eyes. I nodded at his answer and didn't ask where he acquired those sunglasses for the sake of maintaining my fleeting sanity. I see. Gagagaga. Why you? You again. The sea crawl. The crawler. I turned my attention back down towards the crazed rock-enhanced man and the crawler. It seemed that these two scrubs knew each other somehow. A fact that the crawler took great pleasure in as he slid in and out of the larger man's attacks. Hear that? He called me crawler, not cruller. Stop looking so pleased. Most people wouldn't want villains remembering their names. The pink-haired exhibitionist said to the crawler. The crawler decided to take things a little more seriously as he began to carefully lead the rockman away from the populated area they were in and towards a more solitary location. The girl in the tight black suit pulled out a phone and stayed where she was while her apparent partner slid away. Not a combat type, then. Crow Nan Amy, I said as I stood up from my spot and adjusted my black hood. I was wearing my sorcerer outfit, which was comprised of a thick black jacket, a long-sleeved white shirt, and a high collar underneath. I also wore black jeans and sneakers while my katana hung from my left belt hoop. Finally, Slaughter Demon was resting inside a sheath strapped to my back. Any news on that assignment I gave you and the others? I jumped from rooftop to rooftop while keeping an eye on the crawler and the so-called villain. Crow Nan Amy flew behind me and shook his head. I'm afraid we still have yet to find any humans with those bird-like masks. I'll be sure to expand my search, even if it means I'll have to work overtime. Crow Nan Amy said with a sigh. Good. Keep at it. I'll handle things from here. I want to see what these heroes can do. Crow Nan Amy nodded and flew off into the night. Seeing the crawler and the rockman come to a stop at a parking lot, I jumped down between two buildings and slid down one of the brick walls while claws made of my blood sank into the brick to slow my descent until I came to a full stop on the wall. With my blood claws as anchors, I was able to stay stuck on the wall under the cover of darkness. Suck on that, Spider-Man. Blood manipulation was such a diverse and great technique. I watched the ongoing fight with disappointment as the crawler just continued sliding around to avoid the rockman's attacks. All the while, the pink-haired girl with some sort of jumping quirk watched while telling the watching public to call the police. Definitely not heroes. These two are probably vigilantes. I muttered as the crawler continued to not put up a fight. Keep doing that, and you'll trip on all the holes you two made. I didn't have to wait long before the crawler's back foot fell into one of the craters the large rockman made with his attacks, causing the crawler to trip. Seeing his opportunity, Rockman pulled his arm back to finally crush the crawler. Koichi. The pink-haired girl shouted in worry just as the crawler was about to be struck down. Koichi. Did she really shout his real name out loud? I debated on whether to help these two clowns, but a fast-moving shadow moving towards the parking lot caused me to pause. A loud metallic clang rippled through the air as a long-haired ninja with a triangle-like mask stopped Rockman's punch using only his katana, showing off an impressive amount of skill and strength. Rockman took a step back, his face twisted in confusion, almost as if he couldn't believe his strike was blocked by a meager sword. Not wasting a second, Mask Guy swung his katana at Rockman's raised defense with aggressive slashes, littering the larger man's rock-covered body in slices and cuts. Ho, not bad. I grabbed the grip of my own katana and watched the ongoing fight with interest and some excitement. "He's pretty good." "It's the cops." The pink-haired girl cried out as the sounds of police sirens neared their location. Hearing this, the once rampaging Rockman hightailed it out of the parking lot and away from the area. It didn't seem like the Crawler or Masked Man was going after him. Instead, the three decided it was more important to chat. Thanks for the save. Who are you, exactly?" Koichi asked as he and his partner looked at Masked Man. "The name's Stendhal. Another meddler, just like you," Stendhal said as he sheathed his katana. Once Stendhal was done posing and looking cool, he then jumped away using an impressive amount of speed and jumping ability. I leaped up onto the rooftops and began following after Stendhal with an excited grin on my face as the telltale signs of flowing red scale covered my eyes. I knew from the moment Stendhal showed up that he wasn't a hero. No, the guy was practically radiating negative energy. "Now then, where do you think you're going?" Clang. That wasn't very nice. You could have poked an eye out with that, I said as I slid my katana back into its sheath after deflecting a speeding knife. Standing behind me was Rockman, his face covered in sweat, and a worried and pained expression settled over his face. That expression quickly changed to surprise when he noticed my sudden appearance in the extended back alley path he was running through. He stood stock still as his gaze shifted from me to his pursuer, Stendhal, who was now staring daggers at me from the other end of the alley. "Plus 10 SP. You dare get in the way of true judgment," Stendhal said as he reached over to his katana. He unsheathed his dangerously sharp weapon and pointed it toward me in one swift move. "You must be this villain's partner. Very well then, I'll be sure to take you both down." "Villain? Listen here, Tuxedo Mask." I pointed a finger over at Rockman. "I don't really care about or know who this guy is." "Then why get in my way?" Stendhal hissed, his patience running low. I rolled my eyes under the darkness of my hood and then moved my hand to point at him. "Because of you. You see, there's this thing I'm trying to get. And so far, all the clowns I've fought couldn't give me the push I need to get it. You, on the other hand, have some pretty impressive moves." I drew out my katana and held it in both hands beside my head. "So what I want from you is a good fight. Plus 15 SP. Enough of this charade. I'll cut you down and then move on to the one behind you." Stendhal growled out and rushed at me with incredible speed. His katana was pulled back and ready to slice me in two. This is my chance. I have to limit myself to only my pure strength, speed, skills, and CE. No curse techniques. I have to push myself to land a black flash. I dashed forward as well, ready to meet my opponent head-on. The clash of metal echoed through the alley as Stendhal and I engaged in an intense sword fight. Our katanas clashed and sparked as we moved with incredible speed and precision. Each strike was met with a swift parry or skillful dodge, creating a mesmerizing dance of blades. This guy's good. If it weren't for both Yuta's swordsmanship skills and Moki's weapon specialist skills, I doubt I'd last this long. At some point during our fight, Rockman had decided it was time to get the hell out of Dodge and made a break for it, leaving me and Stendhal alone. Stendhal's formidable skills pushed me to the limit, but I matched his every move with determination and focus. Our intense exchange of blows continued. However, Stendhal was slowly gaining ground on me. His bigger size and strength were giving him the edge. It was only thanks to my CE and my natural strength that I was even able to put up a fight. "You're skilled. I'll give you that," Stendhal said as he deflected my horizontal strike. "But I'm stronger. Plus 25 SP. Crap baskets." In a move that took me by surprise, Stendhal closed the distance between us and kicked my stomach with his foot. I grunted as I slid back on the ground, only to look up at the descending blade of his katana over my head. Moving on instinct, I raised my weapon above my head and deflected his attack away, causing him to lose balance momentarily. Now's my chance. I let my katana fall onto the ground as I prepped my CE into my right fist. Stendhal looked down at me and jumped back just as I was about to land a CE-enhanced punch at his stomach. Shit. As he moved away, he threw two knives at me with precision and speed. I raised my right arm and used it to block the knives from stabbing into my torso. With a wince, I ripped them out and threw the knives at the ground. How foolish. You've abandoned your weapon in hopes of hitting me with your fist. Perhaps you're not as skilled as I originally thought. Stendhal said as he leaned forward. Now then, it's time for evil to be cut down. Plus 15 SP, Stendhal, with his razor-sharp katana, moved right at me with incredible speed, aiming to strike me down while I was unarmed. I glared at him as I narrowly dodged and weaved away from his non-stop lethal strikes with calculated and graceful movements. It was taking everything I had to not get sliced or skewered with every attack Stendhal executed. Despite my efforts, Stendhal's formidable skills were quickly pushing me to my limits. I was growing tired, and my speed was beginning to drop. Stendhal noticed this and capitalized on my drop of speed. He slid his left foot out and stepped on my foot, causing me to trip up. Swiping his sword diagonally, Stendhal finally managed to land a cut on my body. Seeing my blood, Stendhal smirked under his mask and spun on his hips to cut off my head. His foot was still pressing down on my own, keeping me in place with his greater strength. Shit. Dodge. Dodge, there's no time or space to dodge. Time seemed to slow to a crawl as I watched Stendhal's razor-sharp sword grow closer and closer to my neck. I tightened my hands into fists as I glared at the man in front of me and charged CE into my fists. I'm not going to lose to you. I refuse to lose. It was at that moment that I finally felt it. Black. Just as Stendhal's blade was a millimeter away from my neck, I landed a punch straight into Stendhal's face while applying my cursed energy within 0.000001 seconds, causing a distortion in space around both Stendhal and me as arcs of red and black sparked to life. Flash. Stendhal's mask shattered on impact as his body flew back several feet in a violent spin. I winced as a long, shallow, bleeding cut now adorned the side of my neck. Despite the pain, I felt my mind grow clearer than ever before. Plus 100 SP. I understand now, I muttered as I looked down at my hands. I clenched them tightly and looked over at Stendhal. An aura of CE quickly grew around my body. It's just like Todo said, all this time, I've just been using CE without truly understanding it, like a novice chef using ingredients without any purpose. But now, it's so clear to me. Stand up, Stendhal. Let me show you what 120% of my potential truly looks like. I said as Stendhal finally managed to stand to his feet. His face was profusely bleeding, and his nose was broken. Plus 50 SP, your conviction is unshakable, Stendhal muttered as he held his bloody face with his hand. He was swaying where he stood as his knees shook. He then raised his hand to show off a blooded knife. But this fight ends here. I watched in confusion as he raised the knife to his mouth. In an instant, my eyes grew wide in realization. No way. A long tongue slipped out of his mouth and gave the bloody knife a long lick. Gah. I felt all control of my body leave me as I collapsed on the floor in a heap, causing my hood to fall off my head. I tried to move, but the most my body would do was tremble in exertion. Despite that, I spun my head to glare over at the man who would one day be Stain. Why, you bastard? What the hell? What's Stain doing here dressed like that? Did I miss his backstory or something? Stendhal fell to one knee as he looked over at me with a shocked expression before it turned into a wide, bloodthirsty smile. You have potential, child. That is why I will not extinguish your light today. Our fight has taught me many things. I'm sure we will meet in the future to finish today's battle. Farewell. Plus 100 SP. I watched helplessly as Stendhal turned around and walked away slowly with a wobble until he disappeared into the darkness. I continued to try and move my body but found the task to be impossible. Flowing red scale. With my technique active, I slowly pulled my hood over my head and began to push my body up. As I moved, it felt like each of my limbs were strapped to 226 kilogram weights, making the normally easy task of standing a Herculean task. Damn. Now I have to wait for his quirk's effect to wear off. Just great. You have pulled Itadori Yuji's pain tolerance. Rank, Silver. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. I watched as the small plastic prize ball in my hand slowly shimmered away once I received my reward. In an instant, the slight pain on my still healing neck had become a lot more bearable. With enough focus, I pushed the pain to the back of my mind as if I wasn't even hurt at all. Even so, the injury still stung. I was sitting in my small room, loose papers and art supplies strewn around, as two laptops sat on my desk. Unlike usual, there were no clones slaving away today. The reason was the large stack of manuscripts and a year's worth of weekly chapters sitting in several folders on a cluttered desk. Safe to say, I was extremely ahead of schedule. I was even in the negotiating process of selling the first entries to both Harry Potter and Star Wars. It wouldn't be long before my name blew up in this world. Well, at least my pen name. Use 700 SP. I said as I twisted the Gacha's dial. After a few seconds, a new prize ball popped out of the machine. I hated to admit it, but I was now thoroughly addicted to gambling away my points. Hopefully, my new addition stayed at this gacha machine and not at the blood-sucking casinos this world has to offer. It killed me at times not to go all in, but I knew I had to be careful with my points. Otherwise, I'd keep hoarding more useless junk from the JJK world. It got to the point that I had to rent an entire storage unit to store all my useless junk. I already had 10 pairs of Gojo sunglasses. I didn't need more, even if they were from a designer brand. You have pulled the inventory curse. Rank, silver. Say what? I watched with curiosity as cursed energy began to gather in the space in front of me from seemingly nowhere. After a few seconds, a purple worm-like creature appeared in the air. Before it could fall on the ground, I caught it in my arms. Hey, so I can win cursed spirits as well? Neat. Does that mean I can pull Rika as well? I said as the worm-like cursed spirit looked at me with a derpy expression. Now then, are you loyal to me or what? The cursed spirit nodded as if it fully understood me. I grinned and lifted it close to my body so it could wrap itself around my torso like it did with Toji. Awesome. I'm going to call you Zyko. Yup. I patted Zyko's head with a smile, causing the spirit to hum. Zyko it is. I walked over and reached under my bed to grab my only two weapons, Kusakabe's katana and Slaughter Demon. I lifted them towards Zyko's mouth and watched in fascination as he swallowed them both easily, causing them both to vanish seemingly. I then reached into its mouth and pulled out Slaughter Demon. Now I can always walk around with my weapons. How convenient. You wouldn't happen to have Toji's arsenal now, would you? I asked Zyko. The spirit looked confused and shook its head. You don't know who Toji is? I wonder if this gacha system cleared your memories when it brought you here. This only begs the question of whether you were Toji or Ghetto Spirit that I snatched or if you're an exact copy made by the system itself. Before I could think any deeper into the possible mechanics of my gacha system, the alarm on my phone went off. I reached over to my desk and hit the snooze button on my phone. Today was the day I would finally meet my editor for my TMNT manga. She had been pestering and repeatedly asking for an in-person meeting after the sudden rise of my story's popularity. Apparently, communication over email and texts wasn't good enough for her. Without wasting any time, I quickly used my remaining 5 pulls. Sadly, I didn't win any more decent rewards. Just a bunch of more useless junk like Miwa's black tie and Miguel's funny hat. Let's get a move on, Zyko, I said, walking out of my room to begin walking through the orphanage hallways. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a pair of round sunglasses to place over my eyes. Hopefully, this won't take too long. General Pio. The aroma of freshly ground coffee beans filled the air as Mikami Asuka, a red-haired woman with blue eyes dressed in a yellow cardigan jacket and black khaki pants, sat at a cozy corner table in the bustling cafe. She watched as the barista expertly steamed milk for her latte, creating a mesmerizing swirl in the cup. The gentle chatter of other patrons provided a soothing background noise, and the warm glow of the afternoon sun streamed through the large windows, casting a golden hue over the entire space. Asuka took a moment to savor the tranquility of the cafe, which was a welcome break from her usual hectic days. She took a sip of her latte. The rich, velvety flavor danced on her taste buds, bringing a contented smile to her face. Asuka had been working in the manga industry for the past 2 years now, so her experience in the field was somewhat lacking. Despite that, she was hungry and desperate to secure her spot at the top of the industry. This meant she had to find the next big story to shake the manga world. That was easier said than done. Even after 1 year of searching and interviewing several hopeful future mangakas, Asuka came up empty-handed. All of the stories and one-shots she'd seen were generic and boring. There was nothing new and fresh. Nothing that would catch the reader's attention. That was until she received an email from someone by the name of Gij. This wasn't unusual by any means. Asuka's email was constantly receiving messages from wannabe artists who wanted her to take a chance on them and their works. But the message she received from Gij was different. His message was short and to the point. Read this and let me know when we can start. Gij's message was one of extreme confidence. Some wouldn't be remiss even to say a bit egotistical. But when Asuka took a look at the attached files, she couldn't help but be unimpressed with the art quality. The drawings were decent, but nothing impressive. But they didn't have to be. No, what stood out like a star in the sky was the story. The tale of 4 mutant ninja brothers who fight against evil and protect the innocent from the shadows as unsung heroes was attention-grabbing. It was also the very story she's been in search of this entire time. Asuka wasn't like most people. Most people wanted to see larger-than-life heroes performing grand heroic feats while looking handsome, beautiful, and human-like. It wasn't a giant secret that the media didn't like to show off those with mutant-type quirks. No, heroes like Gang Orca, Wolfman, Super Snake Woman, and many more pro-mutant heroes weren't exactly pushed to be on the front pages or in main time slots on television or in movies. Even in today's day and age, people still can't differentiate between those who look different and monsters or villains. However, a story like the one of the Turtle Brothers could be the push to help society change. Even if it's a small push. So Asuka instantly agreed to take on Gij and submit his story to Jump. The bigwigs in charge almost didn't accept running the story, but Asuka wasn't one to give up so easily. She pushed and pushed the bigwigs until they agreed to give the story a shot. And to everyone's surprise, except hers, Gij's story was an instant success. The readers couldn't get enough of the tales of the 4 Ninja Turtle brothers and their rat father. Week after week, each edition of Jump had massive sales, a large part due to Gij's story. You can also imagine her shock when she found out that Gij was also a writer as well. He has written the recently awarded New York Times bestseller The Hunger Games. Asuka had asked to meet Gij on several occasions, but the mangaka was adamant about maintaining their communication over the internet or by phone. But after working alongside him for several weeks, Asuka wouldn't take no for an answer anymore. Fine, we can meet at this cafe in Musutafu then. That's how Asuka ended up in a lovely cafe in the city of Musutafu. Her face was eager and impatient to meet the man who did so much in so little time. Glancing around, Asuka noticed a group of young teenagers engaged in lively conversation at a nearby table, their laughter adding a cheerful energy to the atmosphere. The aroma of freshly baked pastries wafted from the display case, tempting her with their decadent sweetness. It's almost time. Where is he? Asuka asked as she took another sip of her drink. Lost in her thoughts, Asuka failed to notice a young black-haired boy dressed in a black hoodie and white shirt as he looked down at his phone and then at her repeatedly. With a shrug, he walked over and sat in the chair opposite of her nonchalantly. Noticing the weird kid sitting in front of her, Asuka raised an annoyed eyebrow at him. Hey, kid, are you lost or something? Listen, I don't have time for you. Can you go bother someone else? Kid? Lady, I'm 12. So, a kid, Asuka said with a sigh. She then made shoo-shoo motions at her uninvited guest with an eye roll. Do you want some money or something? Here's 500 yen. Now go away. The youth wearing sunglasses took the bill with a shrug and slid it into his pocket. Still, he didn't move and stared at Asuka with a slight grin. The red-haired woman slowly began to feel an odd feeling from the kid in front of her. Almost negative. This caused Asuka to slowly slide back into the back of her chair. Her reaction caused the black-haired boy's grin to stretch wider in amusement. Ah, I have to go now. Asuka muttered as she began to gather her stuff to leave the table. Really? The young boy said in an amused tone. I thought you wanted to meet me, Mikami-san. In an instant, Asuka froze and turned to him with slowly widening eyes. Gij, sensei. In the flesh. A few moments later, a long, hushed, high-pitched whine filled the cafe.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going. Plus, it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.